aware, we did, I think with agreement from everybody in the council chamber, agree to declare a climate emergency. And we then agreed subsequent action that would go to scrutiny. So there was broad involvement from all members of council. I've been reflecting on this, Mr. Mayor, and it seems to me that we should perhaps do more than that as well and look at the council facilitating a climate assembly, which would involve members of the public, experts. This is something that I think has only been used once across the country. I think it was in Camden. So I hope that council will agree that that's what we should do. We don't have a monopoly of wisdom, and I think if we get members of the public as well involved, it really will ensure that everybody feels as though they've got a part to play in what is a crucial issue. I've moved at the LGA annual conference, not exactly the resolution that went through council, but a resolution calling on the LGA itself to declare a climate emergency. And I'm pleased to say that that was agreed unanimously, cross-party support. And the LGA is now looking at steps it can take to make sure, again, that's not simply a resolution that's been passed, but looking at what local authority as a group can do. Mr. Mayor, we've now got a new Chief Constable of West Yorkshire, John Robbins, so I think we should send him our congratulations on that appointment. And at the same time we send him our congratulations, can I suggest that we also invite him, together with the Police and Crime Commissioner, to a seminar in Wakefield. I know that speaking to many members of council, again, irrespective of party, that there are issues that all of us probably would like to raise with the Chief Constable in terms of some of the issues that we see in all our wards. So again, with council's agreement, Mr. Mayor, we can extend, I say, congratulations and an invitation. And finally, and I'm sure people won't want to discuss this too long on such a warm day, our usual topic of devolution, just to say that West Yorkshire leaders have now written to the new Prime Minister asking if he will agree to a Leeds City Region interim deal. I'm pleased to say that that interim deal and that interim ask will now include specific funding for towns, which would help Wakefield District. West Yorkshire leaders are meeting on Friday of this week. We've got an afternoon booked to look at key strategic issues, and I will suggest to my colleagues in other authorities that we circulate the document that went to the Prime Minister so that everybody's got an opportunity of looking at what the devolution asks are, so that we can make sure that we are comfortable with them and that, again, there is wider public knowledge of what we're seeking to achieve. Happy to answer any questions, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Box. Very good. I support the initiative of reaching out to the public over the climate change things and over the, especially to the young who are involved heavily in that at the moment. Are there any other questions? Councillor Johnson, Martin Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question for the leader regarding policing in the district. Yesterday, a local resident asked me how long the council had been responsible for policing Wakefield. I informed them that it was the Chief Constable's responsibility. They then showed me a leaflet that had been delivered in my ward by the party opposite. One issue on the leaflet was under the heading, making sure local authorities deliver. Quote, I have helped residents hold local authorities to account, getting them to put more police on patrol. End quote. Can the leader say when the council was informed by the Home Office it was to take over the running of West Yorkshire Police? Because I cannot find any West Yorkshire Police under any portfolio of this council. Or is it that the party opposite have become a member of the Fake News Club? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I mean, clearly it is not a local authority matter. The truth is that under the present government, police numbers have been cut, been slashed right back, and I think that the successful Conservative candidate in the recent election has acknowledged that and has said that he will now try to put right what what cuts occurred. So I know he's made a pledge to increase police. There should never have been cut in the first place. And it is a matter for the Home Office and for the police, not for this local authority in terms of the police numbers that have been cut. The responsibility is entirely lies at the door of this government.
Councillor Picking.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to say a big thanks to the people that were involved on Armed Forces Day. It isn't me, we have a fantastic team that works behind us here. One is Simon TK, who is the event organiser that pulls everything today on the day, and to Kelly Zuck and Andrew Bolchin, who do a lot behind the scenes. But our street scene guys, and I need Maureen to pass this on, we had 3 guys there on that day, Aid Nicholson, Mick Metcalf and Callum Lockwood, who did an absolute fantastic job of the day, smiled all day, and when we left that site at 6:30 at night, there was not a scrap of paper left on it. They do a brilliant job. But to all our veterans and residents who supported us all day and can make it a great success, I also had an email from our oldest D-Day veterans who came on the day, Robert and Iris McClements, a husband and wife. He's an Halifax aircrew and she was ex-ROC. They came as they usually go to Scarborough, but thought they would come to our event instead. And we're very pleased that Peter and Denise and a few other councillors spent the time to talk to them, and so they could explain what they do. Their reply came back the other day with another bit of added information that just said, to say how we enjoyed being made welcome to Armed Forces Day in Pontefract. It was fantastic, and whoever planned the day made a magnificent job of the event, making it a memorial occasion. Our carers travel from Manchester, and they also too think you top Scarborough, and hope to be invited next year, health permitting. So I think it's well done to all our staff, everybody involved in Armed Forces Day, that Wakefield are there. We do support our veterans, past, present and future, so thank you to everybody that supported us.
Yep, thank you to you once again, Sandra. It was an excellent day. I attended it myself and saw the parachuters as well. Councillor Gordon.
I've got 2 questions. Firstly, at the last council meeting, I asked, I think it was Councillor Cummings, about what Wakefield was doing to celebrate LGBT Pride Month, and also how, I think the exact question was, how do we celebrate in the community? And then pointed out that this year was especially a 50th anniversary of the Stonewall riots. And then the answer that I got, I didn't necessarily felt address the question. It started then becoming a much more broader topic and about hate crime in general. I was just wondering if the leader of the council could possibly look into the possibility of the council assisting Wakefield Pride in the funding of the celebrations this year. I was at a charity fundraiser for Wakefield Pride in South Kirby. The bill comes in at about £11,000 in total, and that's covering a whole host of things, including security, rolling road closures and crowd controls, toilets and skips. There's only so much fundraising can do. Other local authorities, including Hull, have made the Pride celebrations in the city a whole reason and sort of festival of ideas about and celebrating it as a wider sort of thing. Is it possible for the council to get involved in this and help contribute towards that? I've got another question as well, which I was going to originally wait and put towards Councillor Cummings, but since you mentioned the climate change emergency declaration that was passed earlier this year, I was just wondering what the council policy is on urban trees. I was absolutely shocked to discover that in the last 5 years, 1,958 urban trees have been felled across the Wakefield district in our towns and city. When I actually asked how many had been planted and replaced in that time, they don't have an exact figure, and it could be as few as 250. That would mean we've chopped down almost 2,000 trees and planted as few as 250. There's a real importance and urgency to making sure that we have a sustainable environment. Urban trees play a huge part in reducing street and air temperatures, filtering out car exhaust fumes, pollutants, and also mitigating the impact of climate change. It would seem it's inconsistent that the council has a policy of chopping down trees without replacing them in urban areas, whilst then pursuing a climate change emergency. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Box.
Just to say that in terms of the council process, the questions that are asked should strictly be on the report that I gave, because the system, I know systems differ in different councils, that the system we have is that I give a report on what I think are the key issues that I've dealt with, and I answer questions on that. In terms of the cabinet then, we've got questions that can be asked of Cabinet colleagues across a range of issues. So that's the way it works. But I will say in terms of Wakefield Pride, Councillor Byford is our champion for that event, which we have always supported, strongly supported. So I'm sure Councillor Byford can make a comment, as will Maureen Cummins in terms of the trees. But I do agree with you in terms of urban trees and the role that they can play in tackling a climate crisis that we face. So I very much agree with that as a principle. But in terms of the specifics that you've raised, Maureen, I'm sure, will deal with that in her report.
Councillor Stansby.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. First of all, I just want to say thank you to Sandra for a brilliant Armed Forces Day. Unfortunately, I couldn't attend it myself. I was away that day. But I've heard excellent reports, and it's a credit to our city and district, so thank you for that. Regarding the climate change recommendation, Peter, I'd just like confirmation that we're not actually going to be promoting electric cars. I am aware of a few councillors in the chamber who have got very nice 4x4 gas-guzzling machines which could do with being replacing with something a little bit more efficient, shall we say. But apparently, no, I haven't. It's not 4x4. It's not 4x4. It's not a 4x4. But given the new report that electric cars actually use more energy than traditional fuel, I'd like assurances on that, please. With regarding to the police funding, yeah, we've had £4 million extra funding, and we do have more police. We have a preset on the council tax.
Councillor, wait a minute.
If you had been to any of the meetings,
It's not a question to Peter, this. It's not a question to Peter.
You would know that we do have extra.
Councillor Stansby, this is a question time to book questions to Councillor Box, not to Councillor Johnson. Not to Councillor Johnson.
You're allowed to be asked, Mr Mayor.
The councillor in question asked a question of Councillor Box, who replied to it. You asked questions to Councillor Box.
Question directed at myself. And just want to say, lastly, congratulations on behalf of the whole council to our new PM, which you did mention. I'm sure that as you are mainly Brexit supporting and representing your constituents who voted 67% to exit the EU, that you will be supporting Boris as our new PM. So, thank you. End of.
Is that a question to Councillor Box? Will you be supporting
I can't laugh because I face drilled yesterday. In terms of electric cars, I can only suggest that people come to Wakefield as I did this morning and will be doing tomorrow on the bus. For those Castle members, the 189 is a great service every 10 minutes, and that's the best way. So ditch the car. The truth of the matter is, look, that in terms of a climate crisis, we've got to make sure that we don't try and solve everything straight away, because if we do, we will fail. The truth is that local government can't do everything. There are a lot of things we can and should do. Perhaps there are some things that we aren't doing that we should do, and that's been alluded to in the previous debates. So I think the idea of scrutiny looking at this, together with a climate assembly, is the best way forward. So that we'll look at all the evidence. I mean, you've raised the issue about electric cars. You may well be right, and the truth is, if I'm honest, I don't know. So you may well be right, but we need to make sure we get all the evidence before us, and then we decide what we're going to do. And that is the best way forward, and actually that's what the LJ itself have agreed to do. In terms of new leaders, yeah, we do have new leaders. I mean, I was surprised when the first thing the new Lib Dem leader did was to say, the first thing she did was to say that she doesn't believe in democracy. I found that bizarre. So the first thing she says is, I don't accept, I paraphrase, I mean, she didn't use these exact words, colleagues, but this is what the effect of what she said. She does not agree with the 2016 referendum result. That's what she says. And she wants to overturn it. I don't. I believe, and I've said publicly, if that happens, it will have a hugely detrimental effect on public confidence in politics and democracy generally. And I've got friends who voted a different way to me, who actually, despite the way they voted, believe that the democratic will of the population should be carried through. So I was surprised because, it just doesn't seem as though that's the first thing you would say, that you don't accept the result of that referendum. In terms of police numbers, I mean, it is, with respect, not correct to say that there are more police. I mean, that's why I say if you get the Chief Constable and the Police and Crime Commissioner, they will tell you in no uncertain terms about the cuts to police numbers. And both your candidates in the recent campaign have admitted that the cuts to police numbers went too far. So I suppose we'll give you half a point as a party for admitting your mistakes, but you now need to make sure that we get police on the streets as quickly as possible.
Councillor Farmer.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, just a quick one. When you brought up climate change, would you not be better to have a new portfolio for climate change rather than a portfolio for skills, digital and technical capabilities?
Councillor Box.
The truth is, I don't think so. I think what you've got to do is to make sure that the issues go right across all the portfolios, is the answer. I really do believe that. There's always a danger if you set up a cabinet post simply for that other parts of the organisation might not be as thorough as all of us would wish them to be. So I think the best thing is to make sure that everything we do right across the portfolios looks at climate change and what it can do in its respective service areas.
Councillor Morley.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Leader, I welcome the opportunity you're going to give to the new Chief Constable and the Police and Crime Commission to come to a special meeting of this council to address us. For when the opposition say that an extra £4 million has gone into policing is unbelievable. Those that live in the real world don't see it. Mr Mayor, when we cannot hold our packed police and community together meetings in Outwood because there's not enough police there to organise them is unbelievable. But a couple of weeks ago, Mr Mayor, for the communities of Aubrey, Ossett, Renthorpe, Outwood and Stanley, we had one PCSO on for the entire communities. I make no criticism of the police whatsoever. But what the Tories have done to the police in this country is absolutely scandalous, Mr Mayor. We need more police on the street, we need better policing on the street, and I welcome that both Tory party candidates and the new Prime Minister are going to put some more police in. It's desperately needed. We should never ever have made any cuts to the policing.
Councillor Cruz.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillor Morley, at our last packed meeting, I think Helen Breer said that we're recruiting an extra 4 PCOs, and yes, she did. And yes, we'll hope that that continues. Thank you.
Any further questions to Councillor Box on his report? No? Councillor Byford, yeah.
In response to the issue raised by Councillor Gordon under the Leader's report, you did raise that at last meeting, and I did comment. I also approached you as you left the chamber and said if you wanted to have a meeting and chat about it, we could do. You said you'd be in touch. You haven't done. Well, that's not how I left it. That's not how I left it. However, since then, I have met with one of the Pride organisations, and I have had a very tentative conversation with my portfolio colleague, Jackie Spate, Councillor Spate, in relation to what we can do for next year, on top of the funding that we've already given them for this year's event. And I'm also meeting again with the Pride Committee in a couple of evenings' time to see if there's anything else that we can do. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Byford. Councillor Arby.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So we now know that the leader of the council is a firm believer of democracy. So in that case, could I ask the leader of the council actually, on behalf of this council, offer his sincere congratulations on the newly coming Prime Minister. At 4 o'clock, the Queen will actually appoint him. And also pledge that this council will work with the new incoming Prime Minister on Brexit and devolution. Thank you.
Councillor Box.
Well, on a personal level, you're always pleased. The truth of the matter is, you're always pleased when somebody achieves their ambition. I say the same about Joe Swinson as well, to be fair. When people do reach that level of leadership, of course you're always pleased with them in that sense. You know, you'd be churlish not to be. And whatever the governments we've had, we've always tried to work with them, in particular on devolution. We've asked for more council funding. So whichever party is in power nationally, this council has always tried to be cooperative and to get the best for the people of our district. Do I think that Boris Johnson is going to make a good Prime Minister? No. I think he will be an absolute and utter disaster for the people of this country. I think if you read some of the comments he's made in the past, it tells you everything you need to know about the man. And I do not believe that the problems that we face in this district will be in any way alleviated by the election of Boris Johnson. Just the opposite.
Thank you for that. No further questions. We'll move on to agenda item number 8, which is to receive written Cabinet members' reports in accordance with the Council Procedure Rule 14.1. Cabinet members have up to 5 minutes to present their report, and there are a further 15 minutes allocated to enable each Cabinet member to respond to any questions or brief comments on issues within their respective portfolios. We're going to give the first report to Councillor Mrs Jeffries. Councillor Mrs Jeffrey, would you move your report to Council?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And just before I start my report, can I just congratulate Sandra on a fabulous Armed Forces Day. And it was great to meet Robert and Iris McLennan, who've had a business in Wakefield for over 40 years. And that is something really worth saying. They were lovely people, and I hope they do make it to next year. On my report, the Nottingley and Pontefract master plans are moving forward. We've been successful to go to the next round of the High Street bid, and officers are busy now putting forward the next bid for moving that forward. We've also put forward an expression of interest for the Heritage Action Zone bid in Wakefield, which will include the cathedral, and we're working with the cathedral on that. In Castleford, in Inward Investment, a factory that was built on spec in Glasshoughton has now been taken by a sports company, and we've actually managed to encourage a Leeds firm to move into Castleford, and it will create quite a number of jobs, so that really is moving forward. The other announcement from the business community is that the new cinema will be opening in the Ridings on the 16th of August. That will really start to bring people into the city, the right sort of people, in the evening and for the nighttime economy. And I think we should congratulate them on that. And finally, we should be sending a delegation to China in the autumn. We've got a number of businesses moving forward who've shown real interest in wanting to attend, and I'm sure that will be a great success, and I know it has cross-party support for this visit. So having said that, I'll move my report.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffrey. Are there any questions or brief comments to Councillor Jeffrey's report? Councillor Stansby.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Just a quick comment on the Renthorpe Neighbourhood Forum that you've put in the booklet. Just wanted to say thank you to all the officers who've been helping with this. It's process has been going on for about 12 months to date. It's just mainly volunteers from the community. They've worked very hard. They're getting a little bit of stick at the moment. They're realising, if you put your head above the parapet, you do get shot down now and again. But yeah, they've worked really well with the officers, and so impressed, and yeah, they're quite excited about it, and yeah, thank you for your support, and wouldn't mind seeing the one in Walton if possible sometime.
Yeah, it's quite a big thing for a community to go forward with a local plan like this. But I think if anywhere, it really fits with Renthorpe. And officers have worked hard. There's a lot of hard work. The community will have to come together with the council to work on it. And the ones that we've already done have been a great success. So I'm sure it will be, and I'm sure all three members of your area will be looking forward to doing that.
Any further questions to Councillor Jeffrey? Councillor Gordon.
I've just got a question in terms of, obviously your portfolio covers regeneration, and one of the key features of the regeneration plan for the Nottingley area is the expansion of about 2,500 new homes over the next 10 years. I had a conversation with one of the planning officers earlier this week and asked the question, how does the council keep in check and make sure that developers are actually following through with the conditions of their planning applications and approvals? I was somewhat surprised when the response was, oh, well, we don't, it's reactive. And that the planning officer in question said they only ever investigate and check that the conditions of planning applications and approvals have been adhered to if there's a complaint or issue. So I was just wondering, in terms of planning applications often cover a range of things, including landscaping and planting trees and a whole host of other issues. How is the council making sure that developers are held to account and following through on their end of the bargain, and that we are actually running the council and not them?
Well, I'm very surprised as an officer would say that we don't take into account. But obviously, when planning applications come in, we have to deal with them on their merit, and as they do that, I think the best thing to do, Tom, would be for us to have a meeting and see what the issue is in Nottingley. Nottingley is going to be, many houses are coming into Nottingley to redevelop Nottingley and regenerate Nottingley. We shall have to look at schools and education and all the infrastructure coming in, but I'm very surprised that an officer would say to you that we don't take it into account. So I would be looking into that, and I will come back to you.
What? Go on then, just clarify quickly.
It was just, I wasn't saying that the council don't take it into account in approving the application of the plan, more that they don't follow up and check that the conditions have been adhered to afterwards.
I'm sorry, but I think they do. But I will be speaking to officers to see. Perhaps you could tell me later who it was you spoke to.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Rhodes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, Denise and Sandra, on behalf of the members that attended the enforcement seminar Monday, could I just say to offer our thanks to the officers who were there and gave us such valuable information. And what a pity it is that our councillor friend opposite couldn't find the time to do exactly like most of us have done, because I understand that that seminar took place on 2 occasions that day to suit people in their work pattern or their committee engagements. So, you know, these opportunities are out there, and there were plenty of questions asked about conditions. They were answered in full by the officers. So I suggest in future, when these opportunities arise, that new members such as yourself take the time to go there. And I would also say, through the front bench, our leader and our deputy leader, it's about time that some of the members here today learnt how processes and procedures go on in council and what the council are responsible for. And I do suggest you take up that offer in the future.
Thank you, Councillor Rhodes. Councillor Womersley. Thank you, Councillor Womersley. Any other questions to Councillor Jeffrey? No? Oh, oh, sorry, yeah, sorry.
Thanks, Betty and Ian, for that. I understand the seminar went very well. They're not easy to do, and it's quite a dull subject. And I know it was 2 sessions. We are having another session in September for anybody who couldn't attend and for a catch-up. But I do thank the officers, and I know I see Tom smiling. But it was a hard day and it was very, very heated conditions, but thank you for that, Ian and for Betty, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffries, for your report. Next portfolio orders for adults and health, and it's Councillor Mrs Heptonstall. Could you please introduce your report to Council?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. In moving my report, I would like to send huge congratulations to everyone involved in the Shared Lives Care Quality Commission inspection in achieving an overall good rating, and particularly in achieving an excellent rating as a caring service. I'd also like to mention the fantastic work that our volunteers across the Wakefield district do to support our residents, and that's whether this is through raising the awareness of preventable sight loss, through Health Watch, or supporting the creation of the new sensory garden, all included within my report. Each volunteer is valued and brings something unique to the area in which they work. I'd also like to congratulate Wakefield Clinical Commissioning Group, who were rated as good by NHS England in their annual performance assessments published on the 11th of July. So well done to all involved. And with that, I move my report. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Heptonstall. Is there any questions? Councillor Stansby.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Again, it's a comment rather than a question, Faith. I don't know if you're aware of the Mental Health Cafe that we're holding Kirkengate on a Monday afternoon. It's been running 6 months now, and to date we've helped people with PTSD and addiction issues, getting back into work, finding homes, and we'd love it if you came one afternoon, be great, and certainly if you could publicise it, it would be fantastic. We don't want too many people coming there. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stansby.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you for that, Councillor Stansby, and I'll definitely come along. That's great. Thank you.
Any other questions to Councillor Heptonstall? No? Okay, then I'm moving on to the next report, which is the portfolio holder for children and young people, which is Councillor Mrs Margaret Isherwood. Would you please move your report to Council? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, I'll move my report. I know members have received a summary of the Commissioner's report. This is confidential. The DFE have decided that this will not be published, but they did agree to allow us to send out for clarification to members and to staff, just to see what the Commissioner has said. But as I say, it is not for publication. My report, I'd like to draw attention to the 16 to 17-year-old homeless protocol. I know members on this side are really concerned about the levels of homelessness that are arising, especially across the district. But we did have the homeless protocol, and I would like to draw attention to the fact that we now have a dedicated housing officer within the MASH service, and now people can refer young people who they feel are vulnerable straight to the MASH for services and response. I've also included a little piece about FAB. I like FAB, I think they do an excellent job, but they're one of many groups out there and organisations that do an awful lot of work to ensure that young people, children and families get all the help and assistance from birth to as they grow older. I have arranged for copies of the report to be made available to members as they go out. The other one is fostering. We need more foster carers. We're doing an excellent campaign, officers are doing an excellent campaign, but we are finding an increase in interest in foster caring, but it is important that we have foster carers. So with that, Mr Mayor, I move my report.
Thank you, Councillor Isherwood. Are there any questions or brief comments on the report? Councillor Stansby.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Margaret, you know, big fan of the children's services, well, big interest in the children's services. However, I was very concerned to read in the recent audit meeting. I'll read it out to you. Perhaps you can help me out with this. It said, the significant challenge faced by the Council in 2018-19 was its response to 2 Ofsted inspections, the first being the focused visit in relation to the Council's front door arrangement for children's services in February 2018, with a further standard inspection of children's social services in June 2018, which rated our service to be inadequate. Whilst the June inspection recognised that improvements had been made, there remained significant weaknesses and the rate of improvement was not fast enough. The report set out in detail where the Council needed to improve, and whilst making difficult reading, the findings confirmed much of what was already known. Now, we've been here, we've gone through it, but what concerned me was that last part of the sentence. Reading the findings confirmed much of what was already known. If we knew about it, why wasn't anything being done prior to the Ofsted inspection? And I am deeply troubled by that.
Can I get the legal officers just to intervene at this section, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do need to point out, particularly for your benefit, Councillor Sherwood, you weren't there, that particular section of the report was, with the agreement of the committee, because the chair isn't here either, amended to reflect the fact that the June inspection confirmed what the February inspection had said and was in no way intended to suggest that we'd known things before Ofsted started to come in. I don't know what the exact wording that was put forward was in the end, because it was to be agreed by the chair of the committee, who isn't here, but it was not approved in the way that it's written there or has been read out.
Okay, Councillor Isherwood, do you want to make a reply?
Well, in view of that, I think we do need clarity on what the situation is before I can respond, because obviously I wasn't at the committee. I don't know what was said. Did you say we don't have the committee chair? So just ask for clarification on that.
I will ask for, you can do that after the meeting, and you can have a separate meeting and clarify that. And if you want to fetch that back as a clarified question in a month's time, please, or 2 months' time, sorry. Are there any other questions to Councillor? Are there any other questions to Councillor Isherwood? No? Okay, then thank you for your report, Councillor Isherwood, very informative. Next is the portfolio holder for Communities and Environment, Councillor Mrs Cummins. Would you please introduce your report to Council?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. First of all, every year I do pay tribute to Shafilia Ahmed, and again this year I make no apology for actually doing that. Shafilia was a victim of honour-based violence, killed by her parents, and it's still happening in our country. So the more and more we raise awareness about this, the more initiatives there are out there for them, and we can help those people at risk. So Shafilia Ahmed Day was on the 14th of July, and I ask you all to remember that she was only a 17-year-old teenager that was subject to an horrific act by her family. The second thing I want to raise, Agenda page 45, Smart Water. You'll see as you go around the district now that businesses are advertising the Smart Water campaign. I think it's part of the bid, city centre management, and it is about tackling burglary in those places that are subject to it. There's been and I'm going, that's if Councillor Gordon can just take a second to put his phone down and listen. There has been a big raise in the wildlife verges, which we are in my portfolio looking at. I'm working with Councillor Morley to see if we can pilot some roadside verge schemes, certainly the arterial routes into the district, and that planting can't happen this year, but it will be happening at some stage over the next year. Finally, as far as the report's concerned, on the 2nd of August in the atrium of Wakefield 1, we will be launching our Litter Heroes campaign, recognising those people that actually, and there's many in your communities that do it, but we will be recognising those people that actually go that extra mile and collect litter for us across the district. So that's on the 2nd of August, 12:15 in the atrium. I just want to address two things that have been mentioned previously by Councillor Gordon, who's now on 2 phones. The trees, I will certainly look into that, because my understanding is we plant 2 trees for everyone we take down. If that's not happening, then I need to know. So I will get to the bottom of that one. Pride, I think, is something that Councillor Byford
responded to. We have supported Pride. We will continue to support Pride. We have put money into Pride from our district-wide pot. They are being supported, and in actual fact, I believe Councillor Jeffries is opening Pride. We as a Labour group have a stall at the Pride event, and lots of us will be walking in the parade, which the organisers of Pride have had support from this council about. And Councillor Stansby, if you go onto the Walton Parish Council site, you'll find the plan on there. If not, I've got a copy of it. With that, I move my report.
Okay, Councillor Morley.
Thank you, Councillor Cummins. I welcome the part on page 44 about flower verges. It's something I always am keen to work with Street Scene on. What they've done in Rotherham and all have been absolutely fantastic. As I've reposted that on social media, it's caught people's imagination. I don't think anybody's against it. The wildlife it can bring, and also just makes the place fantastic. I'd love to see Junction 30 as you come into the Wakefield district. In my ward, Stanley, Aberford Road down there would look brilliant as you come in through Lofthouse Gate, Normanton Bypass. I'm sure there's other in the southeast, the Emsworth Bypass. It could look fantastic, so I'm really, really pleased about that. But on top of that as well, there is also the initiative of the Northern Forest as well. We're looking at as councils to plant more trees, to get more woodlands as well. But one thing that I know spatial policy is looking at as well, for every new house that's built, we also plant trees for them new houses as well. So we can encourage and grow more trees in this district. With that, thank you very much.
Councillor Cummins.
Thank you for that, Matthew. Yeah, we do work with the Wildlife Trust as well. Roger Parkinson, as a lot of you know, is our tree champion, and I think last year he had 1,000 trees donated, and they were planted across the district. So I do know that that has happened, and he is one of our volunteers who works in Thorns Park and at Newmiller Dam. So thank you for that. Yeah, there are some drawbacks to actually planting wildflowers in verges. We will have to look at each scheme. We will be wanting to work with volunteers and community groups to actually ensure that it happens. And we, in our ward, have looked at a couple of arterial routes, Doncaster Road for one, that we would like to see more wildflowers along. We are verge warriors. We don't cut the verges right back, as you know. A couple of years ago, we entered the Verge Warrior initiative so as not to ruin the habitat of those animals and insects that actually live in our verges. So thank you for that.
Councillor Johnson. Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I was going to comment on the flower verges, which I think is a great initiative. And they do look fantastic when you're driving into a city from the outskirts to just brighten it up. The only question is probably not you, Morley, it's for Matthew. Are you going to get rid of your plastic grass that you've put down and put flower verges in there?
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. You have to reply to that.
Well, I don't know of any plastic grass that we're going to put down, but thank you.
Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Margaret, thank you. This is something that happened yesterday. It's, on page 44, you mentioned community recognition, and that's for people who go the extra mile. But I also want to talk about people who just do something. Probably not go the extra mile, but also appreciate because they do something. We had the case yesterday, Councillor Foster and myself were in our ward, and we came across this lady called Amy, who on her own initiative decided that she had a spare morning, so she would cut back some of the bushes, what were growing over the pavement. They were also covering a letterbox and blocking a right of way for people to go in, and that was a very good thing to do. Just tell you a story what happened. We came up, she recognised us straight away. Her first thought was, oh no, somebody's reporting me to the council, they're going to tell me off. We quickly assured her that that wasn't the case, that we support what she's doing, and we arranged that the branches that were locked off would be taken away. We contacted the council to take away. That's a good thing. Unfortunately, there was one resident what came out who complained to her, and that upset the whole thing. We reassured Amy that we were We were appreciating what she was doing, the community were appreciating what she was doing. You shouldn't let one resident saying this thing put her off. When she went, I then went to talk to the resident, and the resident said she was concerned because she wasn't doing it right, she might not have the insurance. But I told the resident that we all appreciate what she did. Don't you think it's a good thing? And she said, yes. And I said, don't you think you ought to apologise to her? And she said, I will do. Whether she does or not, I don't know. But she said it does. So the point, I'm just bringing it to your attention, Maureen, because we've got quite a number of people out there like that. And I just want to say that we appreciate what they're doing. Just send that message out of appreciation.
I think we appreciate every volunteer across this district, and the Mayor himself is now congratulating those volunteers, and maybe that's something that the Mayor would be more than willing to meet with that lady and present her with a certificate to say thank you very much for what you're doing within our communities. There are lots of people like that that just go out and do something. They're doing it because they think they're helping. Yes, health and safety in some situations is a thing that we do have to look at, but people are just good. A lot of people across this district are just good-hearted, and I'm sure that the Mayor, if you speak to the Mayor, he'll organise something for that lady which, you know, will give her a memory of what she's done for this district.
Certainly will, thank you, Maureen. Councillor Tennant.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Agenda item page 44, Pontefract Park. I'd like to pay tribute to Dave Mee and the Friends of Pontefract Park who work tirelessly for the benefit of the people of Pontefract. The park is absolutely wonderful to look at, and the flower beds, etc., all installed by them. And just a quick comment for Councillor Gordon, who's on his phone again, incidentally. We've had hundreds of saplings. You've had your phone on when I was watching it, lad. There's hundreds of saplings have been planted in the park itself recently. So that's for your benefit, Councillor Gordon.
Thank you, Councillor Tennant. Councillor Cummins? No, no. Next is Councillor Gordon.
Does anyone else want to make a little chunt while we're at it? No. So in terms of Councillor Maureen Cummins' report, there's some really good points in there I'm happy to see, and I appreciate the hard work that you do put into it. On the topic of the wildlife vergers, I know one of the things that's probably keen to see is the fact that there can be cost saving as well. On the topic of that, as well as adding to biodiversity in the local area. I was just a little bit surprised that, like you mentioned, you know, trees have been planted elsewhere. I specifically was asking about urban trees, and I know there's tree planting that goes on wildlife parks and nature parks and here, there and everywhere. But specifically in regards to urban trees, it's the impact they have on the immediate environment, cooling the air temperature, also physical and mental well-being as well. It's seen that they improve people's physical and mental well-being. Again, I think one of the things that I raised at the very first council meeting when we had the motion declaring the climate emergency was immediate things that we could do straight away to have an impact, which one of the things that I did mention, which was to, if any money had been spent on a new cabinet role, was one for sustainability and the environment. But as well, I said at the time, if you stopped sending out 100-page agendas and reports and used, I know it is surprising to a lot of you, a phone with email that has zero or negligible trace on the impact of the environment, this would save, just off the 3 council meetings we've had already, nearly 17,000 pages of paper, not to mention the carbon that then goes into posting these out to members. And it's absolutely crackers that we talk about doing things that are going to have an impact, but then simple little things in front of us, we turn our noses up at. Which is something that seems to be the case when I'm on my phone reading the agenda on there and looking at the amendments that are on there. I can't see why this is causing such upset. Is it because someone's actually scrutinising you now?
No. Sorry, Councillor Gordon, what we said was at the beginning of the meeting was phones were on silent and you to use them sparingly. You've got the minutes in front of you. There's no need for you to use your phone. Full stop, period.
Can I just come back on that, Mr Mayor? We do have a very active biodiversity group across this district, which I'm sure you are aware of, and actually one of the biodiversity people is a good friend of ours. So we are aware about biodiversity, and we are trying to do what we do. As far as climate change is concerned, and I understand your venting your spleen at me. It is a council-wide thing. I will just say, don't disagree with you. I really don't disagree with you. But we are mocking you with your phone, but that phone goes through a radio mast, and people think that that's ruining the atmosphere as well. So there are lots and lots. There was campaigns about it some years ago. But anyway, you know, so there are ways that we can improve, and I'm sure that Les has heard what you've said. Councillor Shaw has heard what you've said, and maybe it's something that can be addressed for the future.
I've got 5 minutes left and I've got 6 speakers, so try and be brief. I'm going to go to Councillor Mrs Taylor next.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm actually looking for some kind of assurance from the council for this. I don't know if everybody saw in the paper last week about all the rubbish sites starting to charge people for the rubbish they brought in. For instance, a paving slab charging them £2.50, a bath panel £2.50, a shower screen £10, and there are 47 councils around the country that have started charging like this. And I'm looking for some assurance from this council. In fact, I promised from this council that this. Some other people are actually charging to go into the tip in the first place. They've got to pay £2 to get in the first place, and then they've got to pay the money. I'm looking for some promise from this council that this will never happen in Wakefield.
Councillor Cummins.
I can't say never, and I've not seen the piece that you allude to. We do charge businesses, obviously, for business waste. We do charge that. We have to, otherwise we'd have, you know. As far as I'm aware, that is not something that this council is looking at.
Councillor Graham Isherwood.
Very briefly, Chair, I was surprised at the figures, Councillor, whatever his name is over here, when he started talking about the trees that are being planted. In Featherstone alone, we have a little site, and we've got a warhorse. Have I mentioned that before? But we have a little warhorse. And on that site alone, there's 353 trees being planted. One for every single soldier that lost his life in the First World War. In Charleston, under the wonderful auspices of Roger Parkinson, may I say, there's going to be a lot more planting, and it serves two purposes really. They're going to be planting it because it's good for the environment, but it also will prevent travellers accessing this site, which has been a constant nuisance for years and years. And I know for a fact as well, in Councillor Dagger's ward, the school children there, which same planted it all in my ward, planted a whole raft of trees. And there must have been nigh on 1,000 planted on that side, Dave, if I recall rightly, because it would attract in all sorts of wildlife and everything. So, where you get your figures from for 250? Well, why don't you ask people that know instead of creeping about council offices? Why don't you come to people and raise a question in council and say how many trees have been planted? Don't be interrupting me. Don't be interrupting me. Get back on the phone and Google it. It'll tell you where it is. You're a joke, Bob. You're a joke.
Thank you, Councillor Isherwood. Councillor Loughran. Oh, sorry. I've only got 2 minutes left.
Thank you. It's just a similar point about Councillor Gordon's interest in trees. Just to let you know, there's been 400 trees planted in Pontefract Park over the last 4 or 5 years. Care of the Woodland Trust, who've been very generous to this authority. And also that there's going to be a bank of trees because the street scene people are very concerned about climate change, and they've also come up with plans. So it's something that is going on throughout the whole district. Thank you.
Councillor Cummins.
Yeah, I mean, we could linger on the trees for the next 2 or 3 minutes, which is probably what we've got left. The trees will form part of my report at the September meeting. I will find out how many trees have been planted across this district, and I'm sure it's many, many more than you actually suggest. It's many more than you actually suggest. 1,958 you said that have been felled. There could be all manner of reasons why they've been felled. why they've been felled. There could be disease, there could be all sorts of things. But I will find out how many has been planted. You've already heard that there's been a myriad across Featherstone, across Normanton. We know in our ward, in Ward 5, we've had trees planted. We've worked with kids to plant trees. There's been loads in Thorns Park, which I'm sure Councillor Graham can attest. So we could linger on the trees for quite some considerable time. And
No, we can't, because I've only got a minute left.
yeah, I can continue for a minute so that we don't get any more questions but about the trees, but it will form part of my report in September.
Right, I'm going to give you another minute on, because we did go on this a long time. But when she's answering the question, you're on your phone again. Well, are you not listening to her though? No, you put the phone down, please. Right, thank you. Councillor Stansby.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Right, Maureen, Matthew, 3 or 4 months ago, spent a happy afternoon planting many bulbs and seeds with the Cargate community group. Unfortunately, as they were just about to sprout, well, they were sprouting, they were about that thick, yeah, we did ask the people cutting the grass not to cut, and they went ahead and cut it, and they cut everything down. They were quite devastated. We'd have the bulbs donated and everything, and people had, you know, joined in. It was a whole community thing, but is there anything you can do, please?
Certainly not this year. No, certainly not this year. Did you inform the council that you were actually... Oh, maybe you and I can have a conversation about it afterwards, but I feel your pain. You know, when you go to all that trouble and you get a group together to actually do that, and then all of a sudden the council come along with a gang mower and mow it all down, it's certainly devastating. So maybe we can have a conversation afterwards about that.
I'll be fine. I'm going to take one more. I've got time for one more. The next on the agenda is Councillor Box. Yeah, okay. Okay, I'll take the one after that. That's Councillor Garbutt.
Very quickly, it's a comment more in page 47 indicates how important CCTV is to the services that we provide.
Thank you. Can't answer that.
Yeah, quite right. And I did offer at the last meeting, Councillor Gordon did ask about CCTV, and I think Councillor Keir asked about CCTV, and the offer is still there to visit the CCTV centre if it is that you want to go along and see what happens there. I mean, it's a vital part of combating not just crime in the area, but vulnerability. When it is we have missing people, people with dementia, people with mental health problems, and so on and so forth, it is paramount that we have something that we can monitor. So thank you for that.
Apologies to those who didn't get a chance to have their speak. I've run out of time on that one. So moving on to the portfolio holder for corporate services. Councillor Shaw, could you please introduce your report to Council?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I make no apologies to talk about volunteers either. I think it seems like a volunteer sort of council this, but so it should be, because the number of volunteers, and my personal thanks, and I know Councillor Scott and Councillor Keir, thank you for coming up to Airedale Library. It is important, Mr. Mayor, because after you've gone, the discussion and the number of people who were talking about it and talking about wanting to volunteer was top notch, so thank you. Bottom of page 50, we've got Council on the Run. The top of 51, we've got volunteering in the community, especially dementia friendly. And once again, Mr. Mayor, you saw that in Airedale, there's been a lot of time with the Friends of Airedale Library looking at the dementia friendly room and the system, and it's fantastic, and people are coming in. And to see people use that, it's an absolute joy. So certainly the dementia side of it is going forward in our district, and a lot of, I know Stanley's got one, and I know a number of other areas have got one, and long may they last. Fundraising for local charities. We've also got work experience as well. This council, it's not just about apprentices, it's about work experience and a number of other different areas. And community projects. Community project led by Property Facilities Partnership has delivered 3 months with 12 of 16 students These are the future volunteers. These are the people that want to do things in the community. And I just wanted to say, I'll move my report, thanks to everybody right across the district who are volunteering.
Couldn't agree more. There's a shortage of volunteers, and that's one of the things, through giving them a reward, that's what we're trying to encourage people to participate in. Are there any questions and brief comments to Councillor Shaw's report? I've got Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Les. Could I just ask you, last week, Wakefield Express has actually reported that this council has reduced massively the preparation fund for Brexit from nearly £6 million to £1.6 million. There is actually 70% of reduction, and there is no clear reason has been given by this council at this moment of time. So could I please ask Councillor Shaw to give us a very brief, update about the preparation at the moment, at what stage we are, and why the massive reduction comes in. Thank you.
Councillor Shaw.
There's a number of things we've looked at, certainly for Brexit, but I think we're probably the same as all the public sector. It's changing, and I'm not being flippant when I say if you listen to Boris, then when we do crash out, and I'm not being flippant, then it's going to be a lot worse than what it would be if we do a deal, you know. And so we have put preparations in place, but I'll go into a bit more detail outside.
Any more questions? Councillor Shaw? No? Thank you, Councillor Shaw, for your report. Moving on to the next one, which is the portfolio order for culture, leisure and sport. Councillor Spate. Mrs Spate, could you please introduce your report to Council?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The first thing I'd like to say from the report is what a wonderful weekend we had in Pontefract on the 6th and 7th of July. It's already been said how great the Armed Forces Day was, and I won't say any more than I agree with that. But we also had a fabulous licorice festival. The weather, of course, helped, but it was really buzzing when I went along there, and I was really pleased to see that we were trying very hard to link the town with the castle and try and get some movement between the two. And I think the little lamb train helped that enormously. The other thing I want to mention is the Five Towns Leisure Centre. Because I recently read Councillor Gordon's press release announcing his campaign for a council-funded school in Nottingham. Councillor Gordon is doing what all councillors do, and is campaigning for residents. Indeed, 11 days prior to him writing to me on the 26th of June about this subject, Councillor Stokes emailed me on the 6th of June saying much the same thing. So I think all three ward members are understandably pushing for their community. And council officers will meet with the school to discuss their proposals. In fact, a meeting should have taken place, but on the day, unfortunately, the school representative was unable to attend. But turning back to the press release, it says that it talks about the Five Towns project being over budget. I feel that's just a little bit misleading, as it infers that we've run over budget, when in fact the council increased the budget. There are some increased costs, but most of the increased budget was to facilitate an increased specification, such as a 3G pitch, outdoor changing and referee rooms, better outdoor lighting, 4 tennis courts instead of 2, replacing a refreshment server with a full cafe and kitchen, outdoor toilets, a new vehicle path to the park, and a wellness garden. We've consulted and listened to interested parties, and we've responded positively. In fact, the council took a decision to make a significant investment in the community, and particularly for the benefit of those towns that had a pool closure. We prioritised this at a time of austerity. Finally, it has to be said that the Tory Lib Dem coalition government is responsible for introducing possibly the longest period of austerity that we've known. Councils, and particularly northern ones like Wakefield, have been hit by a sledgehammer of cuts imposed initially by Cameron, Osborne and Clegg. There's no getting away from it. Any Liberal Democrat must accept their party's shared responsibility for the devastating impact austerity has had on council services. I'm sure there are people in this room or would love to see a pool in their old town, Ossett, Aubrey, maybe Stanley. You know, but I'm afraid austerity has done away with any thoughts of that. And Councillor Gordon, I know you may have been in school or at college, I don't know, when all of this started, and I accept that, but you freely joined a party whose legacy in government has included the closure of facilities like Nottingley right across the country. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Spate. Are there any questions on that? I'm taking Councillor Stansby and then Councillor Cruz.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Jackie, honestly, bringing up the A word, I mean, looking through here, you can't say that austerity has come to Pontefract because this, you know, we're almost renaming you portfolio holder for culture and leisure and sport Pontefract. It's Pontefract, Pontefract, Pontefract. There's no austerity in Pontefract. Everything's going to Pontefract. Where's Horbury? Where's Ossett? Where's the pool in Ossett? Renthorpe? Outwood? Sorry.
Thank you. Councillor Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, just following up on what Councillor Stansby said, we had a fantastic Horbury show. It was absolutely packed out. It was a wonderful day. It's a wonderful community organised by the Rotary Club. They're fantastic. There's no mention of anything. And I'm afraid it's great to see things going on around the area, it is. But mention them all, you know? Don't just stick to Pontefract. It gives a wrong impression. Thank you.
Councillor Spade.
Happy to mention them. Let me know about them and we will put them in. Okay? I'm a portfolio holder and I'm a portfolio holder for events where the councillors have some input. But actually, let me know about those and we can refer to them. I'm quite happy to. There are lots of fabulous things that go right across the district, even in Castle and Pontefract that I don't report.
Councillor Mrs Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You've just said that you mentioned the things that you've had some input into. So you're actually saying you've had no input into the Horbury, Ossett, Outwood things. And we've asked again and again and again for £1,000. That's all we want. You have Pontefract Licorice Festival, you have the Rubat Festival, you have the seaside thing in the middle of Wakefield. You have so many things. I don't know who pays for those, but I don't believe it's the people, the community, like we have to pay for everything in Ossett. We walk around, we trudge the streets raising money to get the big screen event on which we had, and it was a brilliant event last Saturday, but for some reason you'll put nothing into it. Could you tell me why, please? And don't mention football, please, because that's what you always come back with.
I've only once come back with the football, but you mentioned it, not me. But we have put money into Ossett as well, you know. And but you just said it, football, we have. But that aside, this council has to make decisions as to where it puts money into events. All of those are approved by Cabinet. And they are usually, I think as you can see, in the areas where there is the biggest population, so we have the biggest impact. Maybe that isn't the right policy, but that is what we do.
Thank you. Councillor Farmer. I'm doing Councillor Farmer now, Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You're a lovely, lovely lady, Jackie, but this austerity thing is becoming boring. You've just made a new cabinet, a deputy cabinet, and you're giving a load of money to somebody who keeps the discipline in your party. I endorse exactly what the people there said. We get nothing. Absolutely nothing. You talk about the football and all that. All we've asked for a bit of money. We raised £7,500 for a big screen event. We've got all the different community groups in our thing. We get absolutely nothing. It all goes up. You talk about the north-south divide. There's a west-east divide for us. And it's not 6-7 months since you told us that we couldn't have a pool because of austerity. And then a week later, you're announcing £20.6 million for a new bath in Pontefract. It's fantastic for them. But all we are in the west side of the city with a cash cow for you to play it all over there.
Councillor Spade, you want to come back now?
I don't think it's worthy of comment. I think we try very hard right across this district, and actually there's some excellent local groups right through the district who do wonderful things, and I'm sorry, I just don't think it's worthy of comment.
Okay, Councillor Richard Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On a more pleasant note, Jackie, I'm sure you would like to, with me, congratulate one of our players at Featherstone Lions for getting, he's been chosen to represent England on the tour to New Zealand in October, and I'm sure you would want to congratulate him along with me.
I most certainly do. That's terrific, and all the best.
Councillor Gordon.
So I'm going to come back to a few things that you've said directly to me. So I'm happy that you've enjoyed reading my press releases. There'll be many more to come, I'm sure. Just on the topic of the actual swimming pool, what actually happened, I came in and spoke to Denise about it. Actually, speaking to the staff at the school, it was mentioned in passing to other ward councillors. And the input that I got back from the school is it was mentioned in passing, never followed up, never heard anything about it. Now, that's actually the reason I decided to run for Nottingley. In the February-January time of this year, I actually emailed all 3 councillors asking about what they were doing to ensure that older people in the community had provision to stay in Nottingham, people who'd spent all their lives who wanted to stay there. Now, I was surprised when I emailed all 3 councillors, not once, but twice. I eventually got 1 reply, and unfortunately that was from the Councillor Glenn Burton, who was no longer here with us. So, in terms of the school approaching me and me doing something off the back of that, it's because there was nothing in the way of communication, which seems to be endemic in the Nottingley area from all intents, which is why I'm here today. Now, on the topic of austerity, and I do understand where you're coming from with the increase to the pool, saying that you've added facilities and whatnot, but it was promised originally at 14.8 million, and it's, like I said at the council meeting before, it's really taken the mick as far as people in Nottingham can see, because with that increase in funding for that one site, you could have built and replicated something like Minsforth elsewhere in the district. People aren't going to travel. For instance, if I was to use public transport to get there from my house, it would take me almost an hour there and an hour back. You've got to get 2 buses and then walk, and if it's raining, people aren't going to do that for a half an hour swim. We need provision of facilities in the local community, and that's what really is sort of the gripe, that we've got a hub which has been put on the busiest road on the run through from the M62 through to Escape. It's going to be closed on race days, and we went all through this before at the last council meeting, so I'll stop there on that. But talking about saying that, oh, austerity, we've not got any money, and then we find an extra 6 million for this, I'll throw some other numbers at you just in response to austerity. Now, Jeremy Corbyn, the leader of your party, the one which Labour peers and Labour members and Labour MPs have said is an institutionally anti-Semitic party, which we'll come on to later, I'm sure, he actually stood in 2010 on a manifesto of austerity like all Labour MPs. And in 2010, the pledged cuts to central government, the Tories promised most, followed by Labour pledging £82 billion of cuts. The coalition delivered £81 billion of cuts.
Is it a question? Is it a question?
I'm getting to it. It's on the topic of...
I'll accept this. That's the point. Okay. That's right. Thank you, Councillor Tully. What I'm saying to you is get to your question, because I've only got 5 minutes left and there's 4 more people to talk, and you're taking all week to do it, so get to your point, please.
Pledge cuts and austerity, this is the point that I was trying to respond to. The point was made to me, and I'm trying to respond to that. It comes a little bit brazen when the Labour Party offered more in terms of cuts of austerity than the coalition delivered. Not only that, we talk about the legacy as well and what that means to people. It was the Labour Council that shut these facilities that now they want to campaign to reopen. You can't get brownie points for putting back a pool that you closed.
And your question is?
In terms of my question then, coming on to that, is...
Quickly.
Okay, interrupting me is probably going to be longer. In terms of that, if you can find 6 million to increase that in Pontefract, can you say that you'll be able to find money to work in school with the partnership to deliver a pool in an area that has no facilities?
What we're saying is that we will talk support of the school. We did go down this route once before with the school, and because we looked to deliver a pool that way, but unfortunately it didn't work out because in that case the particular school just realised that they couldn't manage the revenue costs. And I have to say, this is where we get into the difficulty about having pools in different places. I get your point about once in one, I really do, and anywhere. However, we were paying a subsidy for both the Castleford and Nottingham pools of £750,000 a year, despite the fact that, yeah, I think you quoted that they've got 1,000 visitors. So some of that is like double counting because some come in, go in and use the gym and then use the pool. But anyway, that is about right. But that is actually quite a low number for a pool, and comparing it with some of the others. The Castleford and Nottingham ones were very low. When we examined the Nottingham demand and figures, there were people from Pontefract that also came to Nottingham. They must have lived near it. But there were also a good number of people coming out of area from Selby. So the numbers weren't there to support a pool. When we looked at the numbers weren't there to support a pool. But moreover, the problem is, yeah, we have got austerity, but we've been a little bit better off in terms of capital than we have revenue. And we just simply could not afford the revenue costs of, 4 or 5 pools. Just didn't add up. So that is why.
Councillor Tennant.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to thank Councillor Spade for this excellent report. The Licorice Festivals, I think they put forward about 30,000, Jackie. Again, great venue for it. Incidentally, Licorice does come from Pontefract. Armed Forces Day, again, wonderful day for the town and the people of Wakefield. But I'd like to draw attention to Yorkshire Day, 1st of August. Get yourself to Pontefract Town Centre. You'll see a council here with flat cap on, and it'd be a wonderful day for the town and the people itself. But as for Councillor Stansby's comments about austerity in Pontefract, please come with me on a guided tour around Monk Hill and Nevison and come and see austerity which your party has caused.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Cummings.
Yeah, I couldn't let this go. I just want to comment on the absolutely obscene comment that Councillor Farmer made about austerity being boring. Austerity, you tell that to the thousands of people that are using food banks. You tell that to the thousands of children that are having to be fed through volunteers, through holiday hunger clubs. You had your say, let me have mine. In food banks, holiday hunger clubs, etc. Austerity is boring. You should be ashamed of what you said.
Councillor Shaw. No, you're right.
Just quickly to say that this weekend, Castleford Tigers ladies team, who, by the way, have a number of people from all over the district playing for them, so it's not just a Castleford team. It's all over the district to play Leeds Rhinos in the final of the All England Cup. So we wish them all the well, Jack.
Certainly do.
Can you take good wishes from us all?
Yeah, Councillor Spade.
Yeah, I would like to come back on that and say, yeah, I think I'd like to say good luck to Lindsay Anfield, the coach, and all of the team on Saturday. We're really rooting for them and hope it goes well.
Thank you. Councillor Binns.
Yeah, I want to change the subject completely. About 2 weeks ago, Councillor Sanders and myself were invited to the launch of 2 new exhibitions at the Sculpture Park. They're both linked very much to children, and I didn't want to miss the opportunity of pointing this out so that everybody in the council can make sure that they take their children, their grandchildren, their neighbours' children, whoever, to this exhibition because it's absolutely fabulous.
Thank you, Councillor Binns, for that. And finally, Councillor Box.
Is Councillor Spate aware that Joe Swinson voted for the bedroom tax, scrapping education maintenance grant, public sector pay cap, disability benefit cut, general welfare cuts, and cuts to council funding? Is she aware that that is the case? Now, look, you want to know why some of the comments are made, because you showboat. And I've said before, you showboat. It's all about you, isn't it? In Nottingham, well, it's only me doing this, only me. So we know the Lib Dem playbook. I've been around a while, Councillor Gordon. I know how you operate. And what happens with these folk is, they go down one street, and say, this is a black cat. They go down the next street, this is a white cat. That's what they do. I know when you were... Hang on. Is Councillor Spate aware that when he was campaigning in Nottingham, and he represents a party that doesn't believe in Brexit, he was telling people in one street, well, I actually sympathise with you. Actually sympathise with you supporting Brexit. And occasionally, these folk get into power. Right? In Newcastle, Lib Dems were in power. In Sheffield, you're in power. And what happens? The public get wise to you and throw you out. That's what happens. Don't ever trust a word they tell you. All this sanctimonious stuff. Your new leader was up to her neck in making these cuts to public services. So don't come to this council chamber blaming anybody else but your party.
Thank you. Are you aware of that, Councillor Spade? Thank you for your report, Councillor Spate, and we're moving on now to the next portfolio holder, which is the portfolio holder for skills, digital and technology capabilities. Councillor Graham, would you please move your report to Council?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to draw members' attention to page 60. Last Thursday we had our official launch of the Council's Step Up programme in Nottingham, and it was an absolute pleasure to attend. I'd like to thank officers who organised that. We had in attendance a lot of our partner organisations, and it was a really good networking event which helped us to talk about how we can get in touch with people who are not currently using our services. And what was really nice about the event was I got to meet some of the people who we've already supported in the first month of the programme. For example, 3 people who are being offered support to submit application forms. I met one person who's exploring an apprenticeship, and another lady who not only have we helped to secure part-time work, but she's also pursuing a course to be a teaching assistant. And she made it very clear that without the help of the people at that hub, she would never have thought to do this. So just to make it clear, this programme is not only for those that are unemployed, it's also for anyone who has a job or is looking to upskill or in work progression or pathways to other careers, because that's what... And I've met with Vicky Garner and her team, and I think it's absolutely amazing that already they're working with over 200 15 to 25-year-olds, helping support them to get training, apprenticeships and employment. And I know members will be aware that back in June they ran an employer engagement event, which I mentioned in the report, in Camp Hill. And this was all about inviting businesses to meet with those with special educational needs and look at how they can get them into work in their businesses and how they will provide positivity and a benefit to their business. So can I encourage all members to help spread the word of this project? The details are there. If you know any businesses that would be interested or any young people who need that support, there's a telephone number, there's a Facebook page, there's an email address. Please spread the word as much as possible. And with that, I'll move my report, Mr Mayor.
Thank you for that, Councillor Graham. Are there any brief questions or comments on to that report? Councillor Stansby, followed by Councillor Farmer.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. It's partly to do with comments from Councillor Gordon. I do agree. We do use a lot of paper. We do waste a lot of paper. And I was wondering what you thought about maybe the councillors being involved in training, having tablets rather than laptops, being able to bring them to meetings. You don't need to access the internet once you've downloaded it onto your tablet. We can read the agendas. We don't have to have these posted out. It's also, I take this everywhere with me. If somebody needs help with universal credit application, I can do it there and then. It's great. And it just seems an absolutely brilliant time. Just for the record, Tom, you're quite a young fella. We've tried reading the we've tried reading the reports and agendas on our phones. They're just not big enough, but the tablets would be. So over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stansby. I have to agree, if we've declared a climate emergency, we certainly are looking at ways to reduce paper, and certainly with digital technology nowadays, we should be looking at every alternative. And whilst I don't think looking at a mobile phone is suitable for everyone within this room, it may be for some individuals, it certainly wouldn't be for me. I agree, we do need to look at every possible way, and it's definitely something as part of our digital strategy that we can look at.
Sorry, Councillor. Councillor Cummings next.
I just wanted to say, and Councillor Graham, you know, I've commented on this Step Up project that you ran in Nottingham. I'm really glad it was a success, and I'm really pleased that people engaged with it. You did say that you would be rolling it out across the district. Not everybody could get to Nottingham. I mean, you know, you go to the other end of the district and there's Ossett. So will there be a programme of actually rolling this out so that everybody across the district can take advantage of it?
Thanks, Councillor Cummins. Obviously, to roll out this programme will require additional funding, and we have applied, as you can see in the report, for that additional funding from the European Social Fund and the DWP. So if that becomes a possibility, then that is the case. In terms of why we chose Nottingham, that was part of the master plan for Nottingham, and it's one of our key areas, Nottingham Ferrybridge, where we think this would have the most impact. But there are other areas, certainly in my ward, I know South Kirby has been highlighted as a place that could benefit from something like this, and I totally appreciate. For now, this project is targeted at those in Nottingham Ferrybridge, and we have contacted every household individually to let them know that this service is there. I am very much hoping that this is able to be rolled out, not to everywhere in the district. I don't think it's needed in every place, but certainly in those key areas so that people can access it. I think that's a very good idea.
Councillor Farmer.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Actually, I'm looking for a bit of advice, actually, off you, Councillor Graham. It appears that somebody has been impersonating me on social media. I can't think anybody wants to be me, but they have been doing. For clarification, I'm not on Twitter, I'm not on Facebook, I'm not on Instagram, I'm not on WhatsApp, I'm on absolutely nothing. I'm not even on drugs, right? I know you might find that hard to believe, but I'm not on drugs, right? So I'm just looking for a bit of advice how I can find out who's actually trying to impersonate me, because it's been going around that I've been making comments on Twitter and I'm not on anything. So how do I go about it?
Councillor Graham.
There you go. There we go. But what it is, it's causing a lot of distress for my family, for my children, about comments that have been made on this, apparently this Brexit site. I'm on none of them. Right. I'm actually photographed quite a bit. You know, certain people are photographing me in public places. Right. I don't know whether they think I'm Brad Pitt or something, but you know, I don't know how to stop all this garbage. So if you give me a bit of advice on that, that'd be great. Sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Farmer. I'm certainly no expert on social media. I know Councillor Stansby obviously thinks very highly of me when it comes to Facebook and Twitter, but I'm definitely no expert. In the first instance, I would certainly report it to Twitter. There are mechanisms in place where you can report a fake profile, and if that, of course, and if you don't have, well, I know Councillor Stansby is on Twitter. Maybe as one of your colleagues, she can support you. She knows a lot about it. Alternatively, I would certainly contact the police. 101, I've heard the numbers are down on that.
I'm taking Councillor Dagger next.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Just agenda page 61, I'm just seeking a bit of a clarification if I can. If the figure of 2.75% is the national figure, what is the number of apprenticeships for the council over the same period? And what is the age range of apprentices?
Thanks, Councillor Dagger. So the number, I think you called it 2.75, it's actually 2.57. So the national target for apprenticeships as a proportion of the business has been set at 2.3%. I'm very pleased to report that we're working beyond that. We're currently on 2.57%. So that is the figure for the council. And this would equate, I believe, to around 191 people within the organisation. In terms of the age range, I actually learned this week. We have apprentices with us ranging from age 16 all the way up to age 62. So, quite a huge range there, which again I think is good.
Councillor Mrs Taylor.
Thank you. This is just something when we're talking about accessing stuff on the phone and not being able to read it. Have you any influence on the way people send stuff out? Because there is several things come out onto my phone and I've got to scroll across to read one sentence. They go back to the beginning and scroll across and read the next. And I just give up in the end.
Personally, I'm not in charge of dealing with something like that, but if it's an issue, I'd definitely report it through to our digital team. I know they've been extremely helpful in helping members with any sort of little niggles like that. And if you don't get a response that or a solution to that, please contact me and I will help you as best I can.
Councillor Gordon?
It was just, I'm not on my phone yet. It was just really to comment on the Step Up programme. Unfortunately, I couldn't make the morning because I was at work. But I know in Nottingham there's obviously a lot of complex issues, and I do think out of the places that it would be effective across the district, it's certainly up there. I was just wondering, in terms of the longer term strategy and sort of measuring sort of KPIs in a way, how are you anticipating this will be useful, and what sort of, like, obviously you could throw money at it all day long, but there's going to come a saturation point where everyone can't be employed because there's not enough jobs, or vice versa. I was just wondering what sort of long-term goals in Nottingham, and how will you measure that, really? And just on the topic of the point which was raised by Councillor Farmer, I've reported your fake Twitter account to Twitter for you. Yeah, just on my phone.
Councillor Graham?
Thank you, Councillor Gordon. We have set up a project board, a committee that is overlooking all of our KPIs, and they meet on a monthly basis, and that includes myself, council officers, the DWP, WDH, and other partner organisations, including the Adult Learning Centre. So that is, I totally agree, you can't just throw money at a single time, and whilst that 3 million would be a massive help to help roll this out to other places, you have got to be clever and savvy with it as well. So I definitely am fully confident that the people we have around that table are more than capable of making sure that we meet our targets and deliver the project in full. And I'd like to hope that it's something that you can maybe come along to as an observer and get a taste of it yourself.
Finally, Councillor Rhodes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Michael, I would like to congratulate you and your team that are involved with the apprenticeship schemes that are identified in this paper here. And I think the 191 young people who are being given proper apprenticeships will also agree with that. And really to say, well done, pass on from this council our views that this is something that we all care very much about, our young people and helping them. And this council is an example to other employers out there, large employers, who could take a lead from what we're doing and give the same opportunities across the district to our young people.
Councillor Graham? If not,
thank you for your comment.
thank you for your report. Thank you very much indeed. Final Cabinet member report is that of the portfolio holder for transport and highways. And I'm asking Councillor Morley to give his report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to formally move my report. As you can see, the first item on there on 63, I'll apologise now, but we are gearing up within highway services for one of our busiest times. We're having lots of roads resurfacing, what have you, around the district, so I'll apologise now for the roadworks that will cause, but we'll see benefits in the end. Obviously, road.org's down there as well, if anybody wants to find out what's going on or any disruption on the local highways network. Mr. Mayor, I had the pleasure last week of attending a meeting at Morthorpe Station car park. It was actually wonderful to see the improvements that's happened down there to the buildings. It was absolutely fantastic. The capacity in the car park is actually well over subscribed. So it's good that the Combined Authority have already set aside 1.1 million to look at improvements to that railway station car park. And I know it's something that colleagues from the South East, especially in Kirby and Ensel, will welcome. So that's brilliant news. It's continuing with our expansion, work with the Combined Authority of car parks across the district. Rail use is going up. We need the car parks to support them. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I move my report.
Thank you, Councillor Morley. Can I say personally well done also in resurfacing a lot of the paths as well that's taking place across the district. Any questions? I've got Councillor Mrs Taylor and then Councillor Farmer.
Thank you. Matthew, have you got any information on why the Ossett to Dewsbury Greenway was gated off? You know, I rang you up about the gate going across, and I know Rights of Way came and got the gate open, but have you any idea why it was gated anyway? Because apparently it was the council that did it for some reason. Well, not they didn't do it, it was a company that was asked to do it on behalf of the council.
Truth, no. The rumour I've heard that... I've heard a rumour that somebody from the council meant to have gated it off, but it was being open again, so I don't see why the gates were off to open it. So I know there's been some sort of mixed messages going out there, but obviously I never heard nothing more after the telephone call from yourself. I will chase that up and find out if we know anything about it. Is there any good reason why it was put there, or has it been God knows reason why? So I'll find out through that on Angela. Mr Mayor, going back to your comment though, yes, as driving around the district, it's fabulous to see how much of our footpaths have been resurfaced. Everyone complains about the state of the roads, and we've always got a fantastic programme to improve them. No one ever complains about the footways where majority of people walk. So I couldn't believe I drove through to Ackworth the other day, like every footpath had been resurfaced in Ackworth. So yes, Mr Mayor, thank you.
Councillor Farmer.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. This isn't criticism of you at all, Councillor Moore. It's just basically the article in the Wakefield Express last week regarding the fraudster who tried to con money after the council is handed a fine. The suit to the sum of region of 25,000, and a senior cabinet member says that it could have been 150,000. This is what you said. There's no problem about this. In a recent case, a claim was received where the claimant allegedly had fallen over a broken curb and had sustained very serious leg injuries. In order to send a strong message to potential claimants, this particular case was referred to the council's corporate fraud team and a counter case taken against the claimant. Consequently, the claimant admitted submitting a fraudulent claim, and he was fined and had costs award against him. The problem I've got with it, is the man involved in the incident has not been named. Surely he should be named and shamed if he's prepared to do something like that. Just wondering why he hasn't been, or do you know the reason why he's not been named and shamed? That's Matthew Morley, that. That's Councillor Morley, that. He didn't do it, did he? Did you do it, Councillor Morley? Oh, that's why.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you for that, darling. Dave, I know David's press officer, and I don't know if that was one of your articles, David, but thank you very much for that. Yes, a few people did make comment on that, Councillor Swift and Kelly. But the reason why I don't know why. I think, you know, why we did not name and shame. I don't know if for legal reasons or not, but I'm not sure if you're particularly interested in that, but you got your joke in, so thank you very much.
Okay. Okay, Councillor, is that okay? Councillor Sandberg, do you have your name up with... Okay, then Councillor Cruz.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, just a quick comment, Matthew. I've complained about the states of the pavements in Horbury and Ossett, South Ossett. Following the roadworks, I'm still got my eye on them, and there's still loads of them that have just been tarmacked over, they're not up to standard. So I'd like to know that you are chasing up those and that they're going to be put right. Thank you.
Obviously, I'm not aware of the locations that you are referring to, Councillor Cruz, but I'm sure if you reported that through to Highways, they will look into that, look into the quality of the footpaths that you have mentioned. Okay, Councillor Tully.
Yeah, can I just thank Councillor Morley? It's the second, will be potentially the second improvement to our. We live in a unique place called Southampton. It's wonderful, and we've got 2 railway stations, and we had a massive extension to the railways parking facilities at Southampton, and we welcome the potential extension at Moorthorpe, which is very much oversubscribed. But I would say now we've got sort of the hopefully the pace trains, and we've now got some modern trains in keeping with climate change agenda. We also would want to be looking at some electrification to charge electric cars, but you must bear in mind in my part of the world some of us have only just gone off bottle gas onto pipe gas, so we're a little bit behind the curve somewhat. But in all honesty, thanks for what work has been done, and we will obviously work with you and work with the Transport Authority to make this a rewarding success.
Councillor Scott.
I'd just like to thank Councillor Morley for working with Network Rail for the bridge
over the river, Pricey. It leads from the Pricey Trails over to Fairbanks, and it's a fantastic walk. I've done that 10-mile walk hundreds of times, and I've really missed doing that walk. And now these repairs have hopefully been completed by the end of this month. We'll be able to do that walk again. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for that, Councillor Scott. You don't realise how well used some of these footpaths and walkways are until you have to close part of them down or partly down. The amount of complaints that we got about that, but that bridge will be fit for purpose, will be fantastic, and you'll be able to use that walk again, so I welcome that.
Thank you, Councillor Morley, for your report. Thank you for councillors for giving their input there. That concludes the Council Cabinet members' report. Agenda item 9 is to deal with any questions made by members, and no questions have been submitted. The final agenda item is to deal with any motions proposed by members. Councillor Gordon, will you please move your motion to Council?
So in putting this motion forward, the reasoning behind it is not too dissimilar to why I brought a motion to the last council meeting, which would have allowed to open up this council chamber, increase transparency and make people feel like they're involved in the decisions that have impacts on their lives. Obviously at the last council meeting I did not actually get to summate and reply, as it was closed. A closure motion was used to shut down debate. So I was a little bit surprised really when I saw that there had been an amendment submitted from the Labour group, which I would assume if there's an amendment then they'll be voting for the amended motion, which would actually in fact lower the signatures threshold from 15,000 down to 5,000. And I know there's already been a press release out about this. I'm sure Jackie enjoyed reading that too. And in that I mentioned the fact that under the system in Parliament, you only require 10,000 signatures to get a response. And we in Wakefield actually required a higher threshold to get a debate going in this chamber. This motion, if the threshold is reduced to a 5,000 signatures requirement, would enable people, it would be certainly more likely that they'd be able to come into this room and engage with us in the decision-making process. Okay, people are shaking their heads, I'm not sure what about that's unclear, but anyway. So one of the things that was mentioned at the last council meeting is people might be intimidated by this room, so I found it a little bit incohesive looking at what had previously been said and what the Labour group are now saying. So I'm sure that when we come on to the amendment and this debate, we'll explain that and see how they've got from point A to point B. The whole purpose, like I've said, is to increase transparency and enable people to feel involved. And going back to some of the comments which were made by Councillor Box in regards to me campaigning in Nottingham, that's fundamentally why I stood to be elected. And just for the record, I didn't tell people that I supported Brexit on one street and that I wanted to remain on another. No, I didn't. And if you were there, okay, I'm sure you were.
Can we move your motion? Sorry,
yeah, I've got my 5 minutes to talk on why this motion's here. So in terms of why I put this motion forward, it's because democracy is important. And I said what concerned me most about the way this council was run, and also national issues, was that damage and trust, or lack of trust in politics, which we raised at the last meeting, and you said yourself people were sceptical about it. And I think this is a really good opportunity to allow people into this chamber to engage and debate. Another point which was made on the last motion, the previous motion about allowing questions, was it might actually mean council meetings would last longer. This motion would have the same impact. So it's again great to see the Labour group might now support council meetings lasting longer by engaging with the public. There was also another comment which was made about asking questions. It was old hat. Well, putting a petition before this council is also, in a way, asking a question. What will the council do about it? So I'm glad that Labour have performed mental gymnastics to put forward an amendment, and seemingly looks like they're going to support this motion. Thank you. I move this motion.
Thank you for that. Is the motion seconded? Councillor Keir? I think you are. Yeah, okay. In seconding the motion, do you wish to formally speak now, or do you want to reserve your right to speak later in the debate? You want to speak? All right. Thank you. Councillor Shaw, you has submitted an amendment to the motion. The amendment has been circulated to members prior to the meeting. Councillor Shaw, would you please introduce your amendment?
I very rarely, at my age, find things bizarre, to be honest, Tom. But a couple of things you've said there about democracy. I do find bizarre. I'm not going to read the amendment out because it speaks for itself, but I do want to explain a couple of things. And certainly, when you actually look, democracy is not about petitions, it's about a lot of things. It's about talking to people, honestly, by the way, and not leading them down a path. We do talk to people. We've got the new People's Panel coming along because we do listen. And that's one of the reasons why we're talking like we're talking now, because we do listen. I'm not so sure what you do or some of your colleagues do, but we do. We've got engagement meetings. We've got the digital side, which is growing and growing, and I know Lucinda's at the back there, and some of the work that she's doing with Tom and the team is phenomenal. We go out, we do surgeries, all of us do surgeries, we talk. Most of us, certainly at this side of the room, we were on friends of groups, a number of people in all the areas that we talk about. And I know colleagues in Nottingham have been doing that for years as well. So it's not just about petitions. Petitions is one room where people can say what they need to say. And what I do find is when you talk about democracy, and I'm going to use, and I am going to use it, and I was thinking about whether to use it or not, but I am going to use tuition fees. You talk about democracy. You went out years ago, and I've got 5 grandkids, so I know what it costs. You went out years ago, and you specifically said to everybody, right, what we'll do is we'll ban all tuition fees. And do you know why you said that? Because I'll tell you why you said it. Because you didn't think you were ever going to get into power. And the Leader's just said something that's important here. It's one thing when you're not in power, and when you haven't got the decisions to make, you tell people anything. And guess what? You got screwed in 2010 because it all went wrong. And you went into power. Did you stick up and say, no, we're going to stick with our main heading of no tuition fees? No. You turned round and you said, we'll put them up to £9,000. These are the, and do you know why? Because you had a responsibility in your mind. Now I'm going to talk about austerity, because it is important, because you did that as well. And Swinson and a number of other people were involved. Clegg, well, he's gone now, hasn't he? He's gone. And I'll tell you what, you will, right? I'm talking to this. I am talking to this. And it is wrong, because it does come down to democracy. We are a democratic council. We go out, we talk to people, we listen. But do you know what we do? We do what some of your people not doing. When we can't do it for them, we tell them. We say, I'm sorry, and we tell them why. And I listen about swimming pools. I was involved in swimming pools. I put my hand up. And I'll tell you this, right? We couldn't, it wasn't just affording the swimming pools. What we put in Minthorpe and what we're going to put in Pontefract will serve these residents better than the old ones that we had. And you've got to make decisions like that when you're in power. What you don't do is you don't promise and overpromise, and you stop being popularist. And that's what you're doing. But I'll tell you what, and I've heard it here, you'll get found out. And back on this, we did listen. We thought, let's have a look at it. Yeah, maybe it's time for a revamp. I'm not bothered. I think it's a good idea about the 5,000. I also think it's a good idea about 0.2 and 0.3. So that's what we do. We listen. It's about time you did. I'm moving, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Shaw. Is the amendment seconded? Councillor Tully, in seconding the amendment, do you wish to formally speak now or reserve your right to speak later in the debate?
I'll speak now, Mr. Mayor. I didn't intend to, I just wanted to second this amendment because we talked a lot today about what goes off in this council chamber and what we keep from people and what we did in Nottingham and what Nottingham councils didn't do and did do. But when they closed Minthorpe Pool, this public gallery were full because the people of my patch, or our patch in Ward 14 and Ward 1 and the surrounding areas, were up in arms. The people of Nottingham would have been and could have been and should have been afforded that opportunity if that's the path that they chose to go down. They could have done that. This council have never been my best friend, and I think that's on the record and people know that. But I have never, ever, in the 10 years I have been here, been stopped by anybody in this council from bringing any issue in my ward to this council, and I've met with a good response, whether it's through officers, through the political leadership, or a combination of both. Now, I'm more than happy to come here and sit here while 7 o'clock tonight and debate politics all day long. Because I love Liberal Democrats and I love everybody. You know, I love them all. That same Joe Swinson was the same lady that stuck, you know, fees on tribunal fees, and there was a 78% drop in tribunal fees for people who were getting harassed at work. Don't come in and start suggesting that this council is a closed shop and it don't denote. It is open. It is democratic. And if the people of your communities have got a case, they will come and see their councillors and make that case. And it is quite clear there is 1,001 things we need to debate going forward. Talked earlier about a new leader of the Tory party. Well, that's where we are. Democracy's taking place and we get what we wish for. But the bottom line is this. There is no reason why we should be bringing resolutions to this council to talk about something that we do. This council will always accommodate concerns of our communities, of our wards and our parishes. And it'd be goddamn this day with this council when it doesn't do that. And it'd be stupid and ridiculous of this council, wherever it comes from. And I hear what they're saying Ossett about not having a swimming pool over at Ossett and Albany. And I understand where they're coming from. I get that. I get that. I also have it in Emsworth, not a million miles away from me, because Emsworth was promised one in the 1970s. But sometimes you've got to come here and fight for what you believe in. And the people that send you here, you must have them people well and truly behind you. And this council will never, as far as I'm concerned, negate from taking on board, and I've brought resolutions to this council, actually outside the auspices of the Labour group, to make the case as to why, and this council would never deny us that. So I think at times, and I've got no objection with Councillor Gordon coming to this chamber and bringing resolutions week after week after week or month after month. I ain't got a problem with that. But let's bring some resolutions and talk about issues that are critical to this council and the well-being of people that we represent here. Because as far as I'm concerned, all we're doing with this one is trying to suggest that we're a closed shop. We're not. This is an open and democratic council, and if anybody's got any issue, they can bring to this council and they will be listened to, and I support the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Tully. Does any member wish to speak on the amendment? No? So, Councillor Boss.
Just very briefly, Chair. I think it's right to say that we were the first council ever in the country to have members of the public on scrutiny. And that's over 20 years ago we did that. And we do engage. And I think the amendment talks about the different ways we do engage. Where I disagree with Councillor Gordon is how we engage in terms of the council. I mean, I think your view is slightly more old-fashioned about bringing people in here. I think we can engage with the public on council issues in different ways and perhaps more modern ways using technology. So I don't think there's any difference. It's just the way that we do it. I think everybody would agree that it's part of our role and remit to engage with the public. In terms of when you do this, though, and I'm trying to be helpful to you when I say try and be a little less sanctimonious. Because what you do, you issue a press release saying the Labour group is only interested in talking to itself and it's not democratic. Because, you know, as I mentioned earlier, you do showboat. The truth of the matter is that I can give you two examples, and I will, and one's been alluded to already, where your party seemed to ignore democracy altogether. And one's Brexit, and I know you don't like talking about that, because, you don't. Because it puts you on a different side of the argument to the vast majority of people in this district, so you don't like talking about it, do you? You've not, well, it's no good putting that pained expression on your face. The truth, hang on, let me finish. The truth of the matter is this, that the first thing your new leader said was that she wanted to ignore Brexit. So how's that democratic then? How is it democratic when that happens? So don't start preaching to us in the way that you do, to say that you're the font of all knowledge when it comes to democracy, because you're not. And answer the point that Councillor Shaw's made about tuition fees. Don't ever, as a Liberal Democrat, come into this council chamber and lecture us about democracy, because as Les says, that was the biggest ever political promise made and not actually acted on. The biggest ever. Because you never thought you'd get power. As I explained earlier, when you do get power, you find that all the promises you've made come home to roost and you can never, ever deliver.
Councillor Martin Johnson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm going to speak for the amendment. This council does listen and will continue to listen to its residents on their concerns and views. I don't know where Councillor Gordon's doing his research. It's possibly selective. Only a number of months ago, the council's licensing department received a petition with around 180 names and signatures, and I believe the council received many more with similar numbers. So before Councillor Gordon continues to point the finger and cherry-pick items about this council, let me remind him on his party's record on petitions and people's votes and how his party listened and took on board their views. And I'm not sorry for repeating this, but remember their promise: no tuition fees, a broken promise which left students with two choices. Don't go to university and have a financial millstone around their necks for years to come. Or which did impact on their lives, so students found themselves in debt. And what did the Liberal Party do? They found themselves scampering over ministerial cars and fame and grace of homes. That was their choice. That's what the Liberal Democrats think about petitions and voters. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Okay, I'm going to take Councillor Morley next.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. 3 council meetings in, and we've had 2 motions from our Liberal Democrat member now, both on procedure, obsessed with procedure and making out that we're not democratic and we don't listen to the public and one thing and another and all this. Mr Mayor, I just want to, from my own experience, going back a number of years ago, we're going about tuition fees and all that. I never had the opportunity to go to university, Mr Mayor. As most people aware, this council chamber very rarely went to school because of how I was fetched up in the fairground industry, travelling all over West Yorkshire. Mr Mayor, though, I found myself engaged and wanted to be involved in politics before I was even a member of the Labour Party. I went along to a meeting at Castleford. It was called the area panels, but we used to have co-opties on, and council was there. They had all of the districts getting involved, talking about issues in that area. I found out we could be co-opted onto a council scrutiny committee. I think I said with you, Tracy, Deputy Mayor. I got appointed to the council livability committee. I was on there for a number of years, used to listen to co-opties and get involved. That inspired me then to become a member of a political party and go on to become a councillor. So to say this council's never listened to the views of local residents is absurd. I can give my own experience how over the last 20 years that's happened, and I congratulate what's happened in this council over that years, involving members of our district and our citizens in there, and I support Leslie's amendment.
Councillor Farmer.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a comment that Councillor Box made. I feel actually a bit sorry for Councillor Gordon. He's getting a bit of hammer and all that, but his party wants to remain. Hasn't your party said they want to remain? Or is your party remaining in the south and leaving in the north? I don't get it, I don't understand it. So, that's democracy. On your manifesto, you decided, at your manifesto, you would accept the result of the referendum. You're now campaigning to remain. Just leave the bloke alone. And he wasn't around in the student fees, was he?
Speaking into the amendment, please. Thank you.
Just leave him alone.
Okay.
It's a form of bullying.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Can I have the next one? Can I have the next one? Councillor Stokes, please. Best of order.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm not surprised that Councillor Gordon submitted a motion about petitions because he's got a particular interest in fake petitions, usually to favour his own political ends. And I'm talking about the petition he put on his website, which was still there yesterday, so I assume it's still there now. Put it on just before the elections in March. He put on Ferrybridge Focus Team Facebook page. He asked people to sign a petition to scrap councillors' afternoon tea allowance. It said 63 councillors already receive a basic allowance for carrying out their duties. On top of this, they can claim for breakfast, dinner, tea and transport. And he says, in most jobs you don't get additional salary to top up pay for your commute to work every day. He's certainly never had 3 meals and tea and cake covered on top of his wage. It's a separate allowance, he says, funded by taxpayer money. His petition 5 months ago attracted 31 signatures. One of the comments on the petition was, if councillors are out there representing us, why not claim? What did Tom Gordon say to them? He said, well, the point is, this isn't limited to if they're out working, they can claim it anyway. So I hope you've all claimed for your breakfast, your dinner and your tea for coming here today. But I just wonder, what's happened to that petition 5 months ago? Has Tom Gordon submitted it anywhere? Does he intend to submit it anywhere? Let's bring it here, let's consider it.
Thank you, Councillor Stokes, for that. I'm going on to Councillor Womersley.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I spoke against it last time, and I've sat at this week and we've argued from both sides, Conservative, Labour, and this affects me because I see democracy at work where I'm actually councillor. I've got councillor for the Cross and councillor team. You get jobs, people give you somewhere over the week. That's democracy working. We have full-time council meetings where residents come. And the town comes that. And I go to the town council meetings as a town councillor and a district councillor. And if it's a district council issue, then I take it over it and I take it to the offices of the district council. And I just don't see how the logistics of allowing people to come into the public, yes, come and watch, come and listen, but to take part in debate. This afternoon, it's been a lovely sunny day, been a warm sunny day, and we're in here doing what people want us to do. What I see is that the issues, I mean, some of the council meetings are back to our council report, can go on 6, 7 o'clock, and I'll be Saturday. All right, just on cabinet members report, so I don't see how we can facilitate it, so that my is
Thank you. Okay, has everybody had the say? Councillor Gordon, you can speak once against the amendment and once for the thing, so I'll let you speak.
I'm not speaking against the amendment, just to clarify. I just want to address it and speak on it. So, in terms of the amendment, I think obviously... In terms of the amendment, I'm not necessarily against it, and I think it does expand upon a motion. I find it just a little bit... If the Labour group is in agreement with the motion, then why didn't they do this sooner? And we talk about that this council discusses issues, and I know Councillor Tully was saying that he wanted to make sure we were discussing important issues in this council chamber, but then why did Labour not put a motion forward today? Why did Labour, when looking back at council meetings, there's been a very scarce sort of few times on which motions have come forward. So I agree with the council with this motion, obviously it amended, I will still will, but I just think it's a little bit hypocritical that we've got the councillors here, part of the Labour group, part of the Labour Party, banging on about tuition fees when it was Blair who introduced tuition fees despite promising not to. He then went on to increase them, and then after him, Gordon Brown went on to increase them again. So we're getting moral philosophy from the Labour Party here, which is the party which introduced tuition fees. And just on the topic of what Councillor Stokes has said about the petition that I started earlier this year, it was just instigate a discussion. And do you want to know what that discussion came to fruition this week when I emailed a council officer? And I asked, how much does this council spend on internal catering for council meetings? The figure, absolutely shocking, came back to me. Over the last 3 years, over £60,000 has been spent on providing tea and biscuits and other food for councillors. Sorry, sandwiches then, is that any better? it's all very good and well that you're there sitting upon your perch looking down saying shame on everyone else. But in the time of austerity, and you talked about earlier, about kids having to use food banks, why has this council spent £60,000 on food and drink?
Are you speaking to the amendment, Councillor? Please.
But in terms of the motion, I will support it amended. I don't know if we'd need a vote on that if I'm accepting it as friendly. I don't know what the procedure on that is.
Let me take it from there then, if
Right.
you agree with
But yeah, I suppose that's it really in terms of tuition fees. No one's got a moral high ground on that one.
Thank you. Councillor Shaw, as mover of the amendment, do you wish to reply before we take the amendment to the vote? In exerting your right to reply, may I remind you that no new matter can be introduced. Okay then. So I want it now, we're going to take the amendment to the vote. To clarify this is to determine whether the amendment from Councillor Shaw should become the new substantive motion. Please all show in favour of the amendment. Please show against the amendment, and then show me any abstentions. That is carried. And the amendment now has to become the new substantive motion, and we must take that final vote on the substantive motion. However, before we do so, does any member wish to speak on the new substantive motion? I'll take that as a no. And we'll go forward to please now vote in favour of the new substantive motion, which is of course the amendment. All in favour? Anybody against? And the abstentions are lovely. That is carried. We will now move on to the motion proposed by Councillor Mrs Binns, detailed in the agenda item as 10C in the council summons. Councillor Mrs Binns, would you please move your motion to the council?
Mr Mayor, I move this motion in my name. This motion is both clear in its objective, uncontroversial and the right thing to do. But it makes a real difference to the LGBTQ+ community across our district. We all recognise and value the enormous individual and collective contribution that this community makes. The LGBTQ+ community still face worrying levels of hate crime, and we thoroughly condemn this form of crime and encourage all members of the community to report it to the authorities. It has therefore never been more important to show our unequivocal support and to stand alongside them at Wakefield LGBTQ Pride on August the 11th and annually thereafter. With the rainbow flag flying at the Town Hall, County Hall and at suitable council venues across the 5 towns, to ensure that the whole district can share in this very special day which brings everyone together. The rainbow flag is a powerful and important symbol for the community, and I hope that this motion will pass unanimously to show them that this council stands with them without question or equivocation. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Mrs Binns. Is the motion seconded?
Second the motion, Mr Mayor.
In seconding the motion, Councillor Sanders, do you wish to speak now, or do you wish to relinquish that until and reserve your right to speak later on in the debate?
Speak now, Mr Mayor.
Off you go.
I second the motion, Mr Mayor. We are calling for Wakefield Council to be open and tolerant and to show their support for the LGBTQ+ community across the Wakefield district by flying the rainbow flag in solidarity with them at the Wakefield Pride 2019 and annually thereafter. By flying the rainbow flag at the Town Hall, County Hall and at suitable council venues throughout the 5 towns, we'll be standing shoulder to shoulder with our LGBTQ+ residents right across the district as they celebrate this very important day to promote acceptance and to recognise the importance and valued role each person plays in our society, regardless of who they love. Wakefield Pride has grown from strength to strength since it first set out in 2005. We all hope that this year will be the biggest and most successful to date. Wakefield Council can today send out a strong message of its own. I hope by unanimously backing this motion, Wakefield Council will show our LGBTQ plus residents that we will always stand with them, and I wish them all a very happy Pride.
Thank you for that, Councillor Sanders. Councillor Byford has submitted an amendment to the motion. The amendment has been circulated to members prior to the meeting. Councillor Byford, would you please introduce your amendment?
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you again for giving me the opportunity to speak in support of the amendment to motion 10C this afternoon. Wow, that's all I can say. When you listen to what was said from over there, you'd think that we didn't know what a gay pride event was in Wakefield. I am extremely proud to be a member of Wakefield Council and the support that this council has given the LGBTQ community across our district for a many number of years. As a member of the LGBTQ community myself, I can see the difference that we make with the support that we offer. We, Wakefield Council, appointed an LGBT champion many years ago, giving the community a direct line to the council to speak to councillors, cabinet members and officers. However, it is worth reminding ourselves that in my lifetime alone, there have been several massive changes in public perceptions towards LGBTQ communities and individuals, generally positive, but often quite recessive. We had the partial decriminalisation of homosexuality in 1967 under a Labour government. This year, as was mentioned earlier by Councillor Gordon, we had the Stonewall riots in 1969, and quite rightly so, it is the 50th anniversary. But we also have the introduction of the recessive Clause 28, introduced in 1926, often referred to as Thatcher's Law, having it finally repealed in 2003 by a Labour government. And let's not forget, it was a Labour government that introduced civil partnerships in 1925, which eventually became the Equalisation of Marriage Act. We, as Wakefield Council, support Yorkshire MESMAC, one of the oldest sexual health organisations in the United Kingdom, with strong roots in the LGBT community. And we fund directly Stripes, formerly known as Fruitbow, the biggest youth-focused LGBT plus organisation in West Yorkshire, based here in Wakefield. An amazing organisation supporting many vulnerable young people. The LGBT community representatives have also direct representation on the council's hate group, and they take an active part. We, as a council, also support the Pride organisations in Wakefield with help through grants and supporting their annual Pride events over many years, which we will be supporting against this year. Past mayors of Wakefield have attended many events over the years. In fact, I recall the Pride in Pride events, red balls, fashion shows when Councillor Williams was mayor in 2009, and I know that mayors have followed ever since, supporting events all over the district. And there was a Pride event a couple of weeks ago in South Kirby, and I was there. Colleagues from this side of there, Councillor Gordon was there. We have proudly flown the rainbow flag on Wakefield Town Hall for many years. And we don't just do it on Pride Day, but we do it for the whole week. And during LGBT History Month, the Pride flag is flown proudly at Pontefract Castle. And also in that month, I, as gay champion, and I use that word because that's how I describe myself, attended a couple of high schools and spoke to pupils about the history of LGBT activity in and around Wakefield, the UK and the world in general. The rainbow flag is now a real icon recognised across the world and a symbol for support for the LGBT community. And we in Wakefield fly the flag with great civic pride to raise awareness, to promote diversity to our LGBTQ community and to tackle prejudice and to promote tolerance, inclusivity for everybody in our communities and in my community. So, Mr Mayor, thank you again for letting me speak on this matter, and I move the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Byford. Is the amendment seconded? Thank you, Councillor Graham. Do you wish to speak formally now or reserve your right to speak until later in the debate? Does any member wish to speak on the amendment? I'm taking Councillor Masterman.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Binns, you must have missed the piece in the Wakefield Express a couple of weeks ago where the rainbow flag was flying above Ossett Town Hall. So you must have missed that completely.
Is there anybody else wish to speak on the amendment? Councillor Tully?
Just quickly, just in support, I think we've come a long way, and I'm pleased to see today that our Conservative colleagues have put forward, I accept a motion, and we obviously want to amend it, but, you know, there is still some elements, and we talked, and my colleague Darren's talked about Section 28, that still sees it as a great difficulty, but let's be positive, let's be forward-thinking, let's be forward-looking to this situation, because there will be some elements who will be taking positions in this new government in the next few days that is not as comfortable with it, and I'll say no more than I'd like to think the whole of this council chamber is. And I fully support the amendment, and it's nice to know today that our opposition group are prepared to, or not prepared, are with us, and I think we've taken a long time, and we've always been part of the gay pride movement. We've certainly flown flags in my part of the world, and we've always flown, as far as I can remember, for years and years across this county, and long may it continue, and I support the amendment.
I'm going to. Is it a point of clarification, Councillor Sanders?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's just to say, I feel we're all singing from the same hymn sheet here, and we've achieved as objective in raising this matter in council chamber. I'm quite happy to vote now, and I'm sure we're going to get 100%
Okay,
here.
so I'll take it forward from there if you will. Thank you for your input. I'm going to take. I know that Councillor Graham might want to have his say, but Councillor Picking, just to finish it off.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I support the amendment, as being with knowing Darren a long time and being a councillor for 9 years. Councillor Jackie Williams, who unfortunately is not here today, got me involved in working with the Pride and with a lot of residents that we have on the Wakefield district, far and wide from Wakefield, and we supported them when Jackie was mayor, when I was mayor, and when others have been mayor. We do support I won't go through all the titles, but we do support this amendment, but for the simple reason is we have always supported it. It is nothing new. The flag has been raised for over 8 years, and we work with the Gay Pride every single year, and I have done, except for this year, I will have to give my apologies. So I think, you know, there's no way we should have had this amendment to start with.
Councillor Scott and then Councillor Johnson.
I support the amendment. Prior to me coming as a councillor, I worked for the council, and for about 20 years this council paid my salary, and the majority of my salary, my work was training on equality across the board. Whatever gender, whatever race, whatever sexuality, anything. So this council has supported equality across the board for at least 20 years, because they paid me to go out and do training outside as well as within the council.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. I'm going to take Councillor Johnson, Martin Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I support this amendment. It's great that it's come to this council again, but we've done a lot of things this council over many, many years. And Councillor Gordon and others that are a lot younger than me, he doesn't remember things, I remember things. Being a gay man, when I was 20, I could have gone to jail. I've lived with my partner for 38 years now, and it's fantastic that this legislation is fantastic. I had a civil ceremony in this building, I got married in this building, and that is an opportunity I thought I would never have had in my lifetime. So I welcome this and support it 100%. Thank you.
Councillor Gordon.
It was just a quick one, really, which I'm sure you were surprised and glad to hear. It was just to say that I do appreciate that the motion has been put forward, and I do think the amendment as well, it does add to it, and I think it is important that we do reaffirm what this council has done for the LGBT community. As has been mentioned, I'm relatively young, I'd like to think, I don't feel it, and I've not necessarily had some of the experiences as a gay man that other people have had, and I'm fortunate for that, and I think it is really important that we do reaffirm this and we do continue to make sure that this is something that is on the agenda and it does not drop off. You've still got a lot of places, even within the UK, where there are still issues with attitudes towards homosexuals, transphobia, biphobia, and all the spectrum of the LGBTQ community. And I'm proud that this council, collectively, we're coming together to do something about this and supporting Pride too. I think I am fortunate that, like I said, I've not had any experiences, but there have been absolutely horrific ones. And I think it was brought up at the last council meeting when I raised a question about the incident that had recently happened then at the time, the two women who were assaulted in London on the bus. And these things are still far too common. And I think going forward, Wakefield should be proud. And that is something that I'm really happy to see. Thank you.
Totally agree. On the comments made by Councillor Sanders, before I even offer it to Councillor Graham and Councillor Byford to wrap up on the amendment, Councillor Binns, if you're willing and prepared to adjust your initial proposal to accept the amendment, we can move straight to a vote on that. What do you feel? Are you happy with that? I'm happy to do that. Is councillor members all right with that? Okay then. So we'll take the amendment and we'll have that one vote, but that will be the substantive motion on agreement with the people in the original substantive motion. Is everybody clear? All those in favour then please show. I take that as unanimous. Thank you very much indeed for supporting me in that. So we're going to move on now. I'll have to move on and be scripted. That's just the thing. The final item is the urgent motion from Councillor Jones. Would you please move your motion to council?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was disappointed to discover that the original motion was withdrawn this morning, but I'm pleased that it's on your part you have taken the decision to reinstate it, because I think it gives us the opportunity to emphasise to Ofsted that with new regulations that come into place next September, that we are able to reinforce this council's commitment to supporting Holocaust education and the work of the Holocaust Education Trust. And to ensure, obviously, that this is something which continues to be taught in schools, both in this district, but I think importantly, also nationally. So it's us as a council saying, it's not just about this area, it is about the national picture. You only have to have a few minutes standing in the midst of the buildings of Auschwitz and Birkenau to recognise that the statement, in order to know where you're going, you've got to know where you've been, is as important a reason now as to why we should be teaching this full history curriculum in 2019. You know, as most people in this chamber know, I was a history teacher for 36 years, and occasionally I now go into primary schools and teach the Holocaust if the teachers there don't feel that they are qualified enough. So I do that as well now. But because it gives young people across the generations, across the age groups, the knowledge and understanding of what the Holocaust was. Each year, there are fewer and fewer survivors of the Holocaust alive to provide those first-hand accounts of their experiences. And so it is vital that teachers are able to continue to teach the subject. And it's important that this council is able to strengthen its position and make a clear statement that underpins our commitment to the Holocaust story and, of course, to anti-Semitism. Sadly, I'm old enough to remember in 1988 Kenneth Baker, the then Education Secretary, overseeing the Education Reform Act. And that added for the first time a requirement for a national curriculum. And amongst the required subjects was history, with the content from local, national and world history. And in Key Stage 3, that included a study of the causes and consequences of the Second World War. And since that time, despite the fact there's been significant reforms and reshaping of what was already detailed curriculum, we're still able to demonstrate within that curriculum the requirement to cover challenges for Britain, for Europe and the wider world since 1901 through to the present day. And in addition to studying the Holocaust, which can include the interwar years, the Great Depression, but most importantly, the rise of the dictators. The Second World War and the wartime leadership of Winston Churchill, although I always have to say that I included Clement Attlee, because I always feel Clement Attlee was the key player in making sure everything was going right at home. So you have to sort of say to yourself now, what should be being taught now? But in recent years, and I don't blame schools for this, but history has been one of those subjects which has been pressurised and it's been downgraded as more pressure has been put onto schools to reduce the teaching time of non-core subjects. And certainly, I would have expected, when I was the head of history, and then later on as the school timetable, to allocate, over a period of Key Stage 3, about 175 hours of teaching of history. Sounds a lot, but my goodness me, when you start talking and doing history, it goes very quickly. But that's sadly no longer the case, because the majority of pupils complete their history education at the end of year 8. That means a maximum of 117 hours. And as a result, the teaching of the Holocaust has been consigned, according to my research, very often it's now just in RE. And there's little contextual teaching with cause and consequence. Furthermore, under the Gove reforms, academies were not required to teach the national curriculum at all. So the writing's been on the wall now for some time, because again, I have to go back to 1976 and Jim Callahan's speech, which set off a great debate on education as to what should be taught to all young people. And so, last November, Councillor Isherwood, the corporate director of Beatty Wagner, and I attended a conference where the Chief Inspector of Schools, Amanda Spillman, announced the new Education Inspection Framework. So I call on the Chief Inspector to ensure that Ofsted continues to be a force for improvement, which says in paragraph 10 of the new guidelines, and more importantly, under paragraph 26, leaders construct a curriculum that is ambitious, gives all learners and knowledge a cultural capital they need to succeed in life. Learners study the full curriculum. Providers ensure this by teaching a full range of subjects for as long as possible, specialising only when necessary. And finally, with good subject knowledge presented clearly, have appropriate discussion and identify misconceptions. So I call upon us all today to support the motion that we are able to continue to encourage the full teaching of history throughout the whole curriculum, to ensure that children get the full opportunity to understand how the Holocaust occurred, the events that led up to it, and its consequences, so that we are able to ensure that the lessons that were learned back in that time are not repeated today. So I move my motion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Very nice. I'm going to ask, is the motion seconded? Yes. Councillor Mitchell, in seconding the motion, do you wish to speak now or do you wish to reserve the right till later on in the debate? Okay. Does any member wish to speak on the urgent motion? I've got Councillor Tennant.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wish to support Councillor Jones' motion. In the 90s, I went to watch a film called Schindler's List. Probably the greatest but most moving film I've ever seen, and I'm not ashamed to say I was moved to tears by it. I was haunted by that little girl walking around Warsaw in a ghetto with a red coat on. People probably look at it now and think about it. And that's it, was just playing the piano. It was probably one of the most, again, haunting images I've ever seen in film history, but it gave a big punch. But the thing that I remember about the film as well, it was Steven Spielberg. A few years afterwards, we were being interviewed, and he actually turned around and said he believed that film should be part of the curriculum throughout the world. And I'd like to echo those sentiments. Every child should see that film.
Thank you, Councillor Tennant. Councillor Stansby.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'd just like to say thank you for bringing this emergency motion forward, because it was our motion, it was Councillor Ahmed's motion, and unfortunately he can't be here today because he's had a family emergency. So it's great that we can actually discuss this, because it is very, very important to us as a party, and we had accepted the amendment, and we're really pleased that you're supporting this, and we feel it's important to be taught in schools. We feel, yes, Schindler's List should be shown to all children. I think there are other films that also, The Boy in the Striped Pyjamas, I think is also a good one. So, so thank you for supporting us with this, and thank you for making sure that the motion did go forward, even though it had to be withdrawn. I don't know if that's something that we can maybe look at altering procedure, maybe, so that we can continue even if the person proposing the motion isn't available. So we're just really pleased. We're supporting the amendment, and we're just really pleased that you've gone ahead with this. We want to keep this at the forefront. The whole topic of the Holocaust should be remembered. It shouldn't be airbrushed out of history at all. It's something we need to remember. As you've mentioned before, people who've experienced it, there aren't many who are still around. And we will continue to highlight this issue and continue to promote it as a party. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Stansby. I think what we do is we take each individual one when on its individual merits, but it was obvious that we needed to do this because of the time situation that we talked about. Councillor Eptonstone.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I just inform this council that over a 25-year period, I did run an exchange, or chaired an exchange, with apprentices from the Wakefield district, with the apprentices from Castle Rauxel and Erna in the Roe Valley. Over that 25-year period, I spoke with politicians, I spoke with residents, with trade unions, all sorts of people. And until 15 to 20 years ago, there were a lot of people in Germany that refused to admit that what had happened with the Holocaust. Today, they admit it, they are ashamed of it, and what I'd like to say is that we must never forget it, our children must never forget it, and their children must never forget it. And it's down to us to let them be educated to realise the truth of what happened between 1939 and 1945. I support.
Okay, anybody else wanting to speak on this item? If not, I'm going to return to Councillor Mitchell and give you your right to reply, which you waived until later on in the debate. Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I support this motion. I think we all do, obviously. For me, it wasn't just the Holocaust, the events, the awful pictures I'm sure most of us have seen, the piles of teddy bears or the children's shoes or things which always get to me, Schindler's List, Anne Frank, Fiddler on the Roof, even though there was not Holocaust, it was the same whole sad story. What worried me, always surprised me about it, when I really first understood what had happened, was how the hell it happened in Germany, which is a country which had contributed so much to our art and our literature and our wonderful music and magnificent buildings, and how on earth could people like that ever go down that road? Now, I know the war made it worse because it extended it, you could cover it up, and it extended it right across Europe. Also know, had we been occupied, it would have happened in this country as well. But how did it ever start? And then you start to look and see some things, quite worrying parallels. Harsh conditions after the First World War, blaming a group of people for them. They were blamed for the Germany's defeat, then blamed for the humiliation terms of surrender. Then finally they were blamed for the Wall Street crash of the Great Depression. And in the light of incredible suffering which the German people have to go through, they did fall for it, and they did listen to somebody who sounded positive and who seemed to have solutions, and that's how it works. They wouldn't have known what they were getting themselves into. And I believe a great many of them had no idea when their German friends and when their Jewish friends and neighbours were being moved eastward to precisely where they were going to go. I accept all of that. But it happens because people become indifferent. You can make people change their mind about things. We know how you do. You demonise. You stop getting shocked. I mean, I'm still appalled at food banks, but I'm not as shocked as I used to be, because I sort of accept them now. They're here, I know that. And we see it in America, we see it with the refugees putting babies in cages and people are not objecting as they should do. We stopped howling when refugees were drowning in the Mediterranean. We adapt. We're very good at adapting. That's how we survive very well as a species. But you carry on. So all it takes is a handful of people, really, to get involved in something like that, to be involved in the activities, to actually do it, which it does take a very special sort of person. But all the rest of us have to do is to be indifferent, and we are all capable of that. Once we lose sight of our common humanity, once we start to blame any group of people with any identifying feature, whether it's Jews, or Muslims, or left-handed people, or Eastern Europeans, or anything, once we start to see any group of people as less than us, as not quite the same, as not quite our sort, then it is very easy to step back. And because the gap between not wanting them living next door and not wanting them living at all is not as wide as we think. And this is the important thing about the Holocaust. Along with what actually happened and what can happen in wars, this is how such a country like Germany, such a civilized, cultured, educated society, ever ended up going down that road. Yes, I know a lot of people found it so hard they couldn't admit it. They do now. But what shocks me is not so much there are still people who deny it, but there are people, so many people now don't even know what it was or what happened. Because only 80 years ago, it's not way back in the Middle Ages, and it is not beyond comprehension that something similar could happen again, but it mustn't. And the cry of never again must be a reality, not just an aspiration. This must never happen again, and we must educate this generation, next generation, all generations, so it never does happen again. Thank you.
Councillor Jones, as mover of the urgent motion, you have the right to reply. In exercising that right to reply, may I remind you that no new matter can be introduced. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think obviously my colleague brought up the film Schindler's List, and I must admit I, like every other head of history in the country, received a copy of Schindler's List in the middle 90s as a gesture from the producers of the film. And we used it, and we used it, and we used it. And I don't think how many copies I've gone through since then. But I must admit, no matter how many times I've seen that film, the final scene, for me, still gets me. No matter what. Yeah, the little girl in the red dress, massive teaching point. The scene in the showers, massive teaching point. But it's that final scene because it shows about hope. There is always hope amongst all the mountains in our world. And I think we owe it to all our young people and our communities and our role as leaders that we help them prepare for a very complex world, provide them with the tool to separate fact from opinion, ideology, misconceptions, most importantly teaching. We've got to teach tolerance, not intolerance. That is absolutely vital. And as we're entering a period of change, we've got to remember what is wrong and what is right. Remember that obviously the words of Pastor Martin Niemöller, when he said first they came for the socialists and didn't speak out because I wasn't a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists and didn't speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews and I didn't speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me. And there was no one left to speak for me. That is our responsibility. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. I'm going to move now on to a vote on the motion. Will all those in favour of the motion please show? Any against the motion? Any abstentions? Can I just say that's my second unanimous vote. I'm going for my hat-trick if not today, you can think. That was the last item on the agenda. Thank you, colleagues, for your wisdom and your input and your patience today. The next meeting of the Council is on the 4th of September. I declare